reality is layered like sedimentary rock, and between those layers lie possibilities that exist only for those whose perception has been refined by patience and wonder. What if the Empire of Tartaria exists not just in our past, but in a frequency of existence that runs parallel to our own, occasionally intersecting with our timeline in ways that leave traces spanning hundreds of millions of years? What if this civilization learned to transcend linear time itself, existing simultaneously in the age of dinosaurs, the rise of mammals, and the emergence of humanity, their presence felt but never fully grasped by minds locked into sequential thinking? Tonight, we explore the idea that Tartaria's true nature cannot be found in any map or excavation, but only in the borderlands of consciousness where time becomes fluid and the impossible reveals itself as simply another way of being. Perhaps the question is not when Tartaria existed, but how to attune ourselves to the frequency where it continues to exist still. Imagine, if you will, descending through time itself, each layer of stone a page in the Earth's vast library, each stratum a chapter in the story of life's unfolding. You pass through the recent sediments where human artifacts lie buried, down through the ice ages where mammoths sleep in permafrost, deeper still through the layers where early mammals scurried beneath the feet of giants. And then, crossing the boundary that geologists call the KPG extinction event, you enter the realm where dinosaurs ruled for 165 million years. But our journey does not end there. We continue descending, past the Jurassic seas where marine reptiles commanded ancient oceans, through the Triassic dawn when the first dinosaurs emerged, down into the Permian layers where the greatest dying in Earth's history left its mark in stone. And here, in places where no complex intelligence should exist, we find the impossible. Worked stone, refined metals, geometric patterns that speak not of random geological processes, but of intention, design, purpose. In 1851, near Dorchester, Massachusetts, workers blasting through solid rock discovered a metal vase of exquisite workmanship. The rock was Precambrian, over 600 million years old, formed long before complex life was supposed to exist on Earth. The vase, made of an unknown metallic composition, bore delicate floral inlays and demonstrated a level of craftsmanship that would challenge modern artisans. Yet it emerged from stone that predates not only human civilization, but the very evolution of flowers themselves. This is not an isolated case. In coal mines across the world, objects have been discovered that challenge our understanding of deep time. A gold chain found embedded in coal in Illinois, the geological age placing it at approximately 260 million years old. An iron cup discovered in coal in Oklahoma, its metallurgy so refined that it contains elements that don't occur naturally in such combinations. A bronze bell unearthed from coal seams in West Virginia, its resonance still true after epochs of burial. Coal, we are told, forms from the compressed remains of ancient forests, a process requiring millions of years of heat and pressure. For human artifacts to be found within coal seams, they would need to have been there when the forest was still growing, when the swamps that would become coal were still teeming with life forms that existed hundreds of millions of years ago. Yet the implications stretch even deeper into the abyss of geological time. In the Klerksdorp mines of South Africa, workers have discovered hundreds of metallic spheres embedded in Precambrian rock formations dating back nearly 3 billion years. These spheres, perfectly round with 3 parallel grooves encircling their equators, display a uniformity and precision that defies natural formation. The rock in which they are found predates not only complex life, but oxygen-breathing life of any kind. The standard explanation that these are natural concretions formed by geological processes fails to account for their mathematical precision. Each sphere measures between 1 and 4 inches in diameter, with the parallel grooves spaced with mechanical regularity. Some are hollow, containing a strange, fibrous material that has never been successfully analyzed. Others, when examined under electron microscopes, reveal internal structures that appear deliberately manufactured. Dr. Roelf Marx, a geologist who studied the Klerksdorp spheres extensively, noted that their hardness rating on the Mohs scale varies in ways that suggest intentional metallurgy. The softer spheres show tool marks consistent with lathe work, while the harder ones display a crystalline structure that doesn't match any known natural process. The spheres are a complete mystery, he admitted in a rare interview. They look artificial, but the rock they come from is so old that it's difficult to explain. But perhaps the most intriguing discoveries come not from individual artifacts, but from patterns in the rock itself that suggest coordinated activity on a massive scale. In the Grand Canyon, layers of stone that formed during the Precambrian era show geometric regularities that extend for hundreds of miles. These patterns, invisible from ground level but clearly visible from aircraft, consist of perfectly straight lines, precise angles, and mathematical relationships that echo the architectural principles found in human cities. Geologist Dr. Alexander Koltipin, who has spent decades studying what he calls prehistoric industrial sites, has documented evidence of large-scale engineering projects in rock formations across the globe. In the Phrygian Valley of Turkey, he discovered what appears to be an ancient quarry operation carved into stone that formed during the Miocene epoch, approximately 12 million years ago. The cuts are too precise for natural weathering, too regular for random geological activity. The technological level required to make such cuts in solid stone, Koltipin explains, would exceed what we consider possible for any known civilization. Yet here they are, preserved in stone that formed millions of years before humans supposedly developed even primitive tools. Similar formations have been documented in Russia, Kazakhstan, and Australia, always in geological strata that predate accepted timelines for complex life, let alone technological civilization. The cuts show evidence of advanced techniques, heat treatment that created glass-like surfaces, precision that suggests laser-guided tools, and a scale of operation that implies not individual craftsmanship, but industrial-level organization. The orthodox response to such discoveries has been consistent throughout history. Explain them away, reclassify them, or simply ignore them entirely. Artifacts that don't fit established timelines are often labeled as intrusions, modern objects that somehow found their way into ancient strata through unknown means. Yet this explanation becomes increasingly strained when applied to discoveries that occur consistently across different continents and geological formations. Consider the case of the Coso artifact, discovered in 1961 by Wallace Lane, Virginia Maxey, and Jack Hale while collecting geodes in the mountains of California. What appeared to be a normal geode revealed, when cut open, what looked like a modern spark plug surrounded by hexagonal metal components. The geological matrix surrounding the device was dated to approximately 500,000 years old, far predating any known technological civilization. Skeptics suggested that the artifact was a 1920s automobile spark plug that had somehow become encrusted with rapidly forming minerals. Yet the metal components inside showed no signs of corrosion, despite being embedded in material that would have required centuries to form under normal conditions. The hexagonal structures surrounding the central component were made of materials not matching any known manufacturing process from the 1920s or any other historical period. But perhaps most telling are the discoveries that suggest not isolated instances of advanced technology, but evidence of systematic large-scale civilization operating in the deep past. The bygone pipes of China, discovered in the 1990s, consist of hundreds of metallic tubes running through rock formations that date to approximately 150,000 years ago. The pipes show evidence of sophisticated metallurgy with composition ratios that don't match any known natural process. The pipes extend from the surface down into underground caverns, suggesting a complex infrastructure rather than random artifacts. Some pipes are large enough to walk through, while others are as thin as matchsticks, creating a network that implies systematic engineering. The metal composition includes elements like silicon dioxide and calcium oxide in proportions that suggest intentional alloy creation. Dr. Lu Shaolin, an engineer who studied the pipes extensively, concluded that their manufacture would require technology at least equivalent to modern industrial processes. The precision of the metal composition, the uniformity of the pipe walls, the systematic nature of their placement, All of this points to advanced engineering capabilities operating at a time when, according to accepted history, such capabilities didn't exist. Yet even these remarkable discoveries pale beside evidence that emerges when we examine the deepest, oldest rock formations on Earth. In the Iswa supracrustal belt of Greenland, some of the oldest exposed rock on our planet, scientists have found mineral formations that suggest not just life, but organized activity on a planetary scale. The rock here formed during the Archean Eon, approximately 3.8 billion years ago, when Earth was still settling into the patterns that would eventually support life. Yet isotope ratios in these ancient stones suggest large-scale processing of materials, heat treatment on an industrial level, and chemical processes that don't match any known natural phenomena. Dr. Stephen Moses, a geochemist who has studied the Isua formations for decades, admits that the evidence points toward organized activity of some kind, operating at scales we normally associate with technological civilization. The implications are staggering. If accurate, this would place evidence of advanced activity not merely before complex life, but before life itself was supposed to have gained a foothold on Earth. The titanium to vanadium ratios in Isua samples show patterns consistent with industrial refining processes. The distribution of rare earth elements suggests systematic mining and concentration activities. Most remarkably, the rock contains microscopic structures that appear to be manufactured rather than naturally occurring, geometric forms with mathematical relationships that repeat across vast distances and time frames. These structures, visible only under powerful electron microscopes, display the kind of precision that modern science associates with nanotechnology. They are arranged in patterns that follow the same mathematical principles found in crystal lattices, but with modifications that suggest intentional engineering at the molecular level. Each structure is approximately 50 nanometers across, smaller than most bacteria, yet displaying internal organization that implies design and function. What we're seeing, admits Dr. Moses reluctantly, challenges our fundamental assumptions about when organized complexity first appeared on Earth. Either these are the remains of natural processes we don't understand, or they represent technology operating at levels that exceed our current capabilities. But perhaps the most profound implications come not from individual discoveries, but from patterns that emerge when all this evidence is considered together. The artifacts, the geological anomalies, the mineral compositions that suggest industrial activity, they don't appear randomly scattered through Earth's geological history. Instead, they cluster around specific time periods, creating what researchers call artifact horizons that correspond to major geological transitions. The most significant of these horizons occurs at the boundary between the Permian and Triassic periods, approximately 252 million years ago. This boundary marks the greatest extinction event in Earth's history, when an estimated 96% of all marine species and 70% of terrestrial vertebrate species vanished from the fossil record. Geologists call it the Great Dying, a catastrophe so severe that it nearly ended life on Earth entirely. Yet in rock layers just below this extinction boundary, evidence of organized activity reaches its peak. Mineral compositions suggesting advanced metallurgy, geometric patterns indicating large-scale engineering, isotope ratios pointing toward industrial processing, all reach their highest concentrations in the geological moments before life itself nearly ended. It's as if a technological civilization, operating for millions of years during the late Permian period, either caused or responded to the approaching catastrophe by intensifying their activities to unprecedented levels. The evidence suggests not gradual development, but a mature, sophisticated civilization operating at scales that dwarf modern human impact on geological processes. Dr. Peter Ward, a paleontologist who has studied the Permian extinction extensively, notes that the geological evidence points toward rapid, coordinated changes that affected global systems simultaneously. The scale and speed of these changes suggest the involvement of organized intelligence rather than purely natural processes. The temperature signatures in late Permian rock show evidence of controlled burning on continental scales. Ash layers contain metallic particles with compositions that don't match any known volcanic activity. Most tellingly, the isotope signatures suggest that carbon dioxide was being released into the atmosphere through processes that required advanced understanding of chemistry and geology. Either we're looking at natural processes we don't understand, Ward admits, or we're seeing evidence of technological activity operating on planetary scales during the late Permian period. The systematic nature of the changes, their global coordination, the precision of their timing, it all points toward intentional activity rather than random natural events. This brings us to perhaps the most profound question raised by the impossible layers. If advanced civilization existed in the deep past, why is there so little evidence of it in the conventional archaeological record? The answer may lie in the very nature of geological time and the processes that preserve or destroy evidence of intelligence. Modern human civilization, despite all its monuments and cities, leaves a surprisingly fragile footprint on geological timescales. Steel corrodes, concrete crumbles, and even our most massive constructions would largely disappear within a few million years of abandonment. What survives in the geological record are not the works of intelligence, but their byproducts. Unusual isotope ratios, mineral compositions that don't occur naturally, patterns in rock formation that suggest organized activity. Dr. Jan Zalasiewicz, a geologist who studies humanity's impact on the geological record, estimates that even our current industrial civilization would be detectable as an artifact horizon for perhaps 50 million years after our disappearance, but only to scientists who knew what signatures to look for. Beyond that time frame, the evidence would be compressed into such thin layers that it might be overlooked entirely unless specifically sought. If an advanced civilization existed 250 million years ago, Zalasiewicz notes, we would expect to find exactly the kinds of evidence we're discovering: unusual mineral compositions, isotope signatures that don't match natural processes, and geometric patterns preserved in rock formations. The fact that we're finding these signatures suggests that something was operating at technological scales during these ancient periods, but the implications extend beyond mere evidence of ancient technology. If these discoveries represent genuine artifacts of prehistoric civilization, they suggest that Earth has hosted intelligence for far longer than previously imagined. This means that consciousness, technology, and organized civilization are not recent developments in Earth's history, but recurring features that have emerged multiple times across geological ages. The patterns in the impossible layers suggest cycles of development and extinction, with each cycle reaching different levels of sophistication before succumbing to planetary catastrophes. The late Permian evidence points toward a civilization that had learned to manipulate matter at the molecular level, influence geological processes on continental scales, and perhaps even attempt to manage planetary climate systems. Yet they too passed into the geological record, their cities compressed into thin layers of unusual minerals, their technologies preserved only as isotope signatures and mathematical patterns in stone. What remains is a whisper in the rocks, a suggestion that intelligence has walked this world many times before, leaving traces for those who know how to read the deepest, most ancient pages in Earth's vast library. As we prepare to ascend from these impossible depths toward more familiar territory, we carry with us the unsettling recognition that our species may not be the first to ask questions about our origins, may not be the first to seek meaning in the patterns of existence. Somewhere in the layers beneath our feet lie the compressed remains of minds that once wondered, as we wonder now, about their place in the vast unfolding of cosmic time. The impossible layers keep their secrets well, but to those willing to descend into their depths, they whisper a truth that challenges everything we thought we knew about intelligence, consciousness, and the history of our world. In their silence, we hear echoes of questions asked millions of years before our species emerged, and perhaps, if we listen carefully, we might hear the faint suggestions of answers that could guide us through the challenges that lie ahead. For in the end, the impossible layers teach us that we are part of a pattern much larger and older than human history, participants in a story that began long before the first flower bloomed and may continue long after the last star fades. Whether we have the wisdom to learn from those who came before us, or the humility to recognize that we too will one day become part of the impossible layers, remains to be seen. There exists in the archives of the impossible a collection of maps that should not exist. Drawn by hands that lived centuries before the age of exploration, these charts show coastlines that wouldn't be officially discovered for generations, land masses that appear with startling accuracy despite being separated by vast oceans from their cartographers, and territories marked with names that echo through the mists of time like half-remembered dreams. Among these mysterious documents, none is more enigmatic than those that bear the name Tartaria, vast territories stretching across continents, marked with cities and rivers in places where official history claims only wilderness existed. But what if these maps preserve something far more ancient than medieval geography? What if they are the last surviving records of a world that existed before the continents themselves settled into their current configurations, before the age of reptiles, when the Earth was young and very different powers held dominion over its surface? The story begins with Admiral Piri Reis, an Ottoman navigator whose 1513 world map contains impossibilities that have puzzled scholars for centuries. The map shows the coastline of Antarctica with remarkable accuracy, not the ice-covered Antarctica known to modern science, but the underlying landmass itself, complete with mountains, rivers and bays that wouldn't be mapped by official expeditions until the 20th century. The map's accuracy is so precise that it matches satellite surveys conducted in the 1960s, showing geographic features that have been buried under miles of ice for millions of years. Yet Piri Reis himself claimed no original discovery. In notes written on the map itself, he states that he compiled his chart from older sources, including maps captured from Christopher Columbus and charts that dated back to the time of Alexander the Great. Some of his source maps he claimed were based on even older documents that traced their lineage back to the ancient Library of Alexandria, that great repository of knowledge that preserved the wisdom of ages before its destruction. The implications are staggering. For the Antarctic coastline to be accurately mapped, the ice sheets that currently cover it would have had to be absent. Geological evidence suggests that Antarctica was last ice-free during the Pliocene epoch, approximately 34 million years ago, long before any accepted timeline for human civilization, let alone advanced navigation and cartography. Yet here, preserved in a 16th century Turkish map, is evidence that someone, at some point in the deep past, possessed detailed geographical knowledge of our planet's southern continent in its ice-free state. But the Piri Reis map is only one member of a family of impossible documents. The Orontius Phineus map of 1532 shows Antarctica not only ice-free but populated, with rivers, mountain ranges, and what appear to be settlements marked across its surface. The Philippe Boitsch map of 1754 goes further, showing Antarctica as two separate land masses connected by a narrow bridge of land, a detail that wasn't confirmed by modern science until 1958, when seismic surveys revealed that the continent does indeed consist of two major land masses joined by an ice bridge. These maps share more than impossible accuracy. They share a common cartographic tradition that seems to stretch back through history like an underground river, occasionally surfacing in the work of navigators who had access to sources now lost to mainstream history. And throughout this tradition, one name appears with startling frequency: Tartaria, marked as vast territories extending across continents that officially had no advanced civilizations during the periods when these maps were created. The medieval Catalan Atlas, created in 1375, shows Tartaria extending from Eastern Europe across the entirety of Asia, marked not as empty wilderness, but as a populated empire complete with cities, trade routes, and territorial boundaries. The level of detail suggests direct knowledge rather than speculation. Rivers are shown following courses that match modern satellite imagery, mountain ranges are positioned with geographic accuracy, and the scale relationships between different regions correspond to actual continental proportions. What makes this particularly intriguing is that the Catalan Atlas was created long before the supposed age of exploration, When European knowledge of Asian geography was limited to fragmentary accounts from a few intrepid traders, yet the map shows regions that wouldn't be accurately surveyed by European expeditions until the 18th and 19th centuries, marked with a precision that suggests systematic exploration and detailed geographic knowledge. The Mercator maps of the 16th century take this impossibility even further. Gerard Mercator, the Flemish cartographer whose projection techniques revolutionized navigation, included detailed depictions of Arctic regions that wouldn't be explored by official expeditions until the 20th century. His 1569 world map shows Greenland's true outline with remarkable accuracy, including coastal details that match modern surveys. More mysteriously, it shows open sea routes through the Arctic that correspond to periodically ice-free passages that modern science has confirmed existed during various warming periods throughout history. But Mercator's most enigmatic contribution is his depiction of the Arctic regions themselves. His maps show the North Pole as surrounded by 4 land masses separated by channels of open water, with a massive whirlpool at the centre, drawing ocean currents from around the globe. This description matches ancient accounts found in various cultural traditions, from Norse sagas describing the maelstrom at the world's end to Hindu texts describing the cosmic mountain Meru surrounded by 4 continents. Modern oceanographic surveys have revealed that the Arctic Ocean floor does indeed contain a massive circular depression, surrounded by 4 major underwater ridges, geographic features that could, under different climatic conditions, have been the 4 land masses and central whirlpool that Mercator depicted. The accuracy of his Arctic cartography becomes even more remarkable when we consider that he claimed to base his maps on ancient sources rather than contemporary exploration. The thread that connects all these impossible maps is their apparent derivation from much older source materials. Cartographers consistently claim to be copying or compiling from ancient documents rather than conducting original surveys. The implication is that somewhere in the deep past, detailed geographic knowledge of the entire planet existed in map form, preserved through unknown means across vast periods of time until fragments emerged in the work of historical cartographers. This brings us to the most profound question raised by the forgotten cartography. If these maps preserve genuine ancient knowledge, from what period in Earth's history do they originate? The answer may lie not in recent centuries or millennia, but in geological ages when the continents themselves were configured very differently from their current positions. Continental drift, the process by which Earth's landmasses have moved across the planet's surface over millions of years, means that any maps showing accurate global geography must have been created during specific geological periods when the continents were positioned to allow comprehensive surveying. The accuracy of ancient maps showing both Arctic and Antarctic regions suggests they originated during a period when global climate conditions were very different from today, warmer overall, with ice-free polar regions and sea levels significantly different from current measurements. Dr. Charles Hapgood, the geologist who conducted the most comprehensive study of ancient cartography, concluded that the source maps must have been created during a period when advanced civilization possessed detailed knowledge of global geography under climatic conditions very different from those that have existed during recorded history. His analysis of coordinate systems, projection techniques, and mathematical precision led him to estimate that the original surveys were conducted using methods equivalent to or exceeding modern scientific cartography. Hapgood's research revealed that many ancient maps were drawn using spherical trigonometry, a mathematical technique that wasn't officially developed until the 16th century. Yet maps from the 14th and 15th centuries show evidence of sophisticated projection corrections that account for the Earth's curvature with precision that matches modern satellite imagery. The mathematical knowledge required for such accuracy suggests not primitive navigation, but advanced geodetic science operating at levels comparable to contemporary surveying techniques. The implications become even more remarkable when we examine the systematic nature of the ancient geographic knowledge. The maps don't show random coastal outlines or isolated geographic features. They demonstrate comprehensive understanding of global weather patterns, ocean currents, seasonal variations, and the relationships between different climatic zones. The placement of islands, the courses of rivers, the positions of mountain ranges all show evidence of systematic exploration and detailed scientific observation. Consider the mystery of the Zeno map, created in 1558 but claiming to reproduce a 14th century original that showed the North Atlantic with impossible accuracy. The map includes detailed depictions of Greenland's coastline, showing fjords, bays, and coastal features that match modern surveys. But more mysteriously, it shows these features as they would appear during a warming period when much of Greenland's ice sheet had melted conditions that haven't existed since long before any accepted timeline for European exploration of the Arctic. The map also shows islands in the North Atlantic that don't currently exist above sea level, but do exist as underwater banks that would have been exposed during periods when sea levels were significantly lower. The accuracy of the underwater topography suggests that whoever created the original surveys had access to these regions when they were above sea level, implying map-making during geological periods when global climate and sea levels were very different from current conditions. But perhaps the most intriguing aspect of the forgotten cartography is its consistent depiction of Tartaria not as a single kingdom or empire, but as a vast network of territories that extended across multiple continents. Medieval and Renaissance maps show Tartarian lands stretching from Eastern Europe through Asia, with additional territories marked in North America, Northern Africa, and even Australia continents that supposedly had no contact with each other during the periods when these maps were created. The scale and distribution of these Tartarian territories suggests not a typical historical empire, but something closer to a global civilization with knowledge and influence spanning the entire planet. The consistency of the name Tartaria across different cartographic traditions, combined with the accuracy of the geographic details, implies that these maps preserve genuine memories of a worldwide civilization that existed during some previous period in Earth's history. Dr. Anatoly Fomenko, a Russian mathematician who has studied historical cartography extensively, notes that the mathematical precision of Tartarian territorial boundaries on ancient maps suggests systematic organization rather than random tribal territories. The geometric relationships between different Tartarian regions, the systematic nature of their placement, the consistency of their depiction across different map sources, this all points toward coordinated civilization operating at planetary scales. Fomenko's analysis of coordinate systems used in depicting Tartarian territories reveals that the original mapmakers possessed detailed knowledge of longitude and latitude, mathematical concepts that weren't officially developed until the 18th century. The precision of Tartarian territorial boundaries suggests systematic surveying using techniques equivalent to modern geodetic science, implying technological capabilities far exceeding those attributed to medieval civilizations. The global scope of Tartarian territories becomes even more significant when we consider the geographic accuracy with which they are depicted. Maps showing Tartarian lands in North America include details of river systems, mountain ranges, and coastal features that match modern surveys. The same precision appears in maps showing Tartarian territories in Australia, complete with accurate depictions of the continent's unique geographic features. This raises the profound question: how could medieval European cartographers possess accurate knowledge of continents that wouldn't be officially explored until centuries later, complete with detailed information about internal geographic features that required extensive surveying to map accurately? The answer may lie in the possibility that these maps preserve knowledge from a period when global exploration and mapping had already been completed by an earlier civilization. The evidence suggests that Tartaria, rather than being a medieval kingdom that was later suppressed or forgotten, represents the surviving memory of a much older global civilization that possessed advanced geographic knowledge, sophisticated mathematical techniques, and the technological capabilities necessary for worldwide exploration and mapping. The maps that preserve this knowledge may be the last surviving fragments of a comprehensive world atlas, created during a previous era when conditions were very different from those that have existed during recorded history. But when could such comprehensive global mapping have been accomplished? The climatic conditions implied by the ice-free polar regions, the different sea levels, and the exposed land masses suggest a period during Earth's history when global temperatures were significantly warmer and ice sheets were much smaller or entirely absent. Geological evidence indicates that such conditions last existed during the Eocene epoch, approximately 50 million years ago, when global temperatures were warm enough to support temperate climates at both poles. Yet this timeframe places the original mapping far before any accepted timeline for advanced life, let alone technological civilization. The implication is that the forgotten cartography preserves evidence of intelligence and organization operating during geological periods when, according to orthodox science, such capabilities should not have existed on Earth. Dr. Robert Schoch, a geologist who has studied the relationship between ancient maps and geological history, suggests that the cartographic evidence points toward multiple periods of advanced civilization, each adapting to different climatic and geographic conditions as Earth's systems evolved over geological time. His analysis of the mathematical techniques used in ancient map-making reveals knowledge of planetary dimensions, coordinate systems, and projection methods that suggest sophisticated understanding of Earth as a spherical body in space. Schoch's research indicates that the original mapmakers possessed knowledge equivalent to that of modern satellite surveying, including understanding of gravitational variations, magnetic declination, and the mathematical relationships between different geographic regions. The precision of ancient maps in depicting distances between continents suggests measurement techniques that account for the Earth's true dimensions, with accuracy that wasn't officially achieved until the 18th century. The most profound implications emerge when we consider the possibility that the forgotten cartography preserves not just geographic knowledge, but evidence of technological capabilities that operated across vast spans of geological time. If the maps originated during periods when the continents were configured differently, when climate conditions were unlike anything that has existed during recorded history, then they represent knowledge accumulated during multiple geological epochs. This suggests that the civilization responsible for the original mapping may have persisted through massive changes in Earth's surface configuration, climate systems, and biological evolution. The consistency of the cartographic tradition, its preservation across thousands of years of historical upheaval, and its mathematical precision all point toward knowledge that was carefully maintained and transmitted across time periods that dwarf human historical memory. The forgotten cartography thus offers us a window into possibilities that challenge our fundamental assumptions about the relationship between consciousness, civilization, and geological time. If these maps preserve genuine ancient knowledge, they suggest that intelligence has been present on Earth for far longer than orthodox history acknowledges, adapting to and documenting changes that have occurred across millions of years of planetary evolution. As we study these impossible maps, tracing their coastlines with our fingers and marveling at their precision, we're not just looking at geographic documents. We're examining evidence of minds that once contemplated the same planetary systems we observe today, but from perspectives shaped by experiences across geological ages. In their careful preservation of coordinates and territories, we glimpse the dedication of unknown cartographers who ensured that their knowledge would survive the rise and fall of continents, the advance and retreat of ice sheets, and the passage of time itself. The forgotten cartography reminds us that knowledge, once gained, creates its own momentum toward preservation. Somewhere in the deep past, minds recognized the importance of maintaining accurate geographic records across whatever changes the future might bring. Their success in this preservation allows us today to glimpse fragments of a world that was mapped with precision when our current continents were still finding their positions, when polar regions were warm and green, and when the Earth itself was younger and very different powers charted its mysteries. In the end, these maps serve as more than historical curiosities. They're invitations to expand our understanding of what intelligence can achieve when it operates across the vast scales of geological time, reminders that our planet may have hosted sophisticated civilizations many times before, and perhaps most importantly, evidence that knowledge itself can survive the rise and fall of entire epochs, waiting patiently for minds capable of recognizing its significance. Stand before the great stones of Sacsayhuaman and you feel it immediately, the presence of something vast and patient, intelligence made manifest in megaliths that seem to grow from the living rock itself. These are not mere walls built by human hands, but expressions of a technology so far beyond our understanding that we have no choice but to dismiss them as impossible, relegating them to the safe category of historical mysteries, while their true implications whisper truths too large for comfortable comprehension. The stones fit together with tolerances measured in thousandths of inches, each block weighing hundreds of tons, cut and shaped with precision that would challenge modern laser-guided machinery. Yet they were supposedly created by a civilization that official history claims possessed only copper tools, rope, and human muscle. The mathematical perfection of their angles, the acoustic properties of their chambers, the astronomical alignments embedded in their very structural point toward capabilities that transcend not just the technology of their attributed builders, but the technological understanding of any known human civilization. But what if these magnificent structures represent not the achievement of human builders at all, but the surviving remnants of something far more ancient? What if the great megalithic sites scattered across our planet are the weathered remains of a global civilization that built in stone because they understood that stone alone would survive the vast catastrophes that periodically reshape the Earth's surface? What if Tartaria, that mysterious empire erased from maps and memory, built these monuments not during the recent millennia of recorded history, but in the unimaginable depths of geological time, before the first dinosaur walked the earth? The evidence begins with the stones themselves and their impossible precision. At Ollantaytambo in Peru, massive granite blocks weighing up to 50 tons are fitted together so perfectly that not even a knife blade can be inserted between them. The surfaces show none of the tool marks that would be expected from copper or bronze implements, but instead display the smooth, glass-like finish that modern science associates with heat treatment at temperatures exceeding 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit. Dr. Christopher Dunn, an engineer who has studied megalithic construction techniques for decades, notes that the surface finishes on Ollantaytambo stones match those produced by modern precision grinding equipment. The tolerances we observe, he explains, are typical of aerospace manufacturing, not ancient masonry. The surfaces show evidence of processes that require industrial-level temperature control and precision machinery. Yet the mystery deepens when we examine the logistics of megalithic construction. The granite blocks at Ollantaytambo were quarried from mountainsides 6 miles away, then transported across terrain that includes a raging river and elevation changes of thousands of feet. Modern heavy lifting equipment would struggle with such a project. Yet these massive stones were moved and positioned with precision that suggests technologies far beyond anything attributed to pre-Columbian civilizations. The acoustic properties of megalithic sites add another layer of impossibility. Standing in the chambers of Newgrange in Ireland or within the granite walls of the King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid, visitors consistently report unusual auditory experiences. Sounds seem to hang in the air longer than physics would predict. Voices take on harmonic qualities that don't exist in normal environments, and many people describe hearing strange tones or resonances with no apparent source. Scientific analysis reveals that these acoustic anomalies are not accidental features, but result from precise engineering of chamber dimensions, wall angles, and stone composition. The rooms function as harmonic resonance chambers, designed to amplify and modify sound waves in specific ways. The mathematical relationships between chamber dimensions follow principles of acoustic engineering that weren't officially understood until the development of modern physics. Professor Paolo De Bertolis, an archaeoacoustician who has studied megalithic sites throughout Europe, has documented evidence of sophisticated sound engineering at locations separated by thousands of miles and supposedly built by unconnected cultures. The acoustic properties are too consistent to be coincidental, he notes. These chambers were designed by builders who possessed detailed understanding of sound wave physics, harmonic resonance, and the relationship between architecture and consciousness. The precision extends beyond individual structures to encompass entire complexes that function as integrated systems. The Giza Pyramid complex demonstrates engineering coordination that exceeds most modern construction projects. The three pyramids are positioned to mirror the constellation Orion with astronomical accuracy. Their internal chambers align to specific stars with precision that requires understanding of precession cycles spanning thousands of years. Yet the engineering marvels of Giza pale beside the sophistication revealed at sites like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, where massive stone pillars weighing up to 16 tons are arranged in precise circles that demonstrate both astronomical knowledge and construction capabilities that challenge every assumption about prehistoric technology. The pillars are carved from single blocks of limestone shaped into perfect columns and decorated with intricate reliefs that would challenge modern stone carvers. Carbon dating places Göbekli Tepe at approximately 11,600 years old, making it older than Stonehenge by roughly 6,000 years, and predating the supposed development of agriculture by several millennia. Yet the site demonstrates organizational capabilities that would require coordination of thousands of workers, sophisticated planning, and technological resources that don't match accepted timelines for human development. Dr. Klaus Schmidt, the archaeologist who led the excavation of Göbekli Tepe until his death in 2014, admitted that the site challenges everything we thought we knew about the development of civilization. The level of sophistication, both in construction and artistic achievement, is completely unprecedented for its time period. But perhaps the most intriguing aspect of megalithic construction is evidence of technologies that don't match any known historical capabilities. Throughout megalithic sites worldwide, researchers have documented evidence of stone softening techniques that allowed builders to shape granite and other hard stones as if they were clay or putty. At Sacsayhuamana, massive granite blocks show what appear to be fingerprints pressed into their surfaces, as if the stone was soft when handled by the builders. Similar evidence appears at megalithic sites across the globe. In Bolivia, the ruins of Pumapunku contain andesite blocks that show evidence of precise machining, including holes drilled with perfect cylindrical precision and surfaces that appear to have been shaped using powered tools. The andesite used at Pumapunku is nearly as hard as granite, yet the blocks show tool marks that suggest they were cut and shaped while in a softened state. Dr. Jan Peter de Jong, a material scientist who has analysed samples from Pumapunku, reports finding microscopic evidence of heat treatment that would require temperatures exceeding 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, applied in precisely controlled patterns. The heat distribution patterns we observe, he explains, suggest the use of focused energy sources that could soften specific areas of stone while leaving adjacent areas unaffected. This level of precision would require technology equivalent to industrial laser systems. The implications of stone softening technology extend far beyond simple construction techniques. The ability to soften and reshape granite at will implies understanding of molecular structures and energy systems that modern science is only beginning to explore. Such technology would allow builders to create structures of virtually unlimited complexity and precision, limited only by their ability to visualize and plan the final result. Evidence for such advanced capabilities appears in the form of structures that seem to be carved from single pieces of stone, despite their enormous size and complexity. The Kailasa temple at Ellora in India appears to be excavated from a single hillside, creating a structure that includes multiple levels, intricate sculptures, and architectural details that would be difficult to achieve even with modern construction techniques. Traditional archaeological explanations suggest that the temple was created by carving away the surrounding rock, essentially sculpting a building from a mountain. Yet this explanation fails to account for the precision of the internal structures, the mathematical relationships between different architectural elements, and the acoustic properties that suggest the entire complex functions as a resonance chamber. Dr. Devangana Desai, an art historian who has studied the Kailasa temple extensively, notes that the precision required to create such a structure through conventional carving would exceed the capabilities of any known historical technology. The internal passages, the architectural proportions, the integration of sculptural and structural elements all suggest construction techniques that we don't understand. Similar questions arise at other megalithic sites that appear to be carved from living rock, rather than assembled from individual blocks. The Church of St. George at Lalibela in Ethiopia is cut directly into volcanic rock, creating a structure that extends both above and below ground level, with architectural complexity that challenges conventional construction explanations. The precision of the carving at Lalibela includes perfectly straight walls, right-angle corners, and architectural details that would require measuring instruments and planning capabilities far exceeding those attributed to 12th century Ethiopian builders. The church is connected to other rock-carved structures through a network of tunnels and passages that suggest systematic excavation rather than random carving. But perhaps the most remarkable evidence for advanced megalithic technologies comes from sites where stone appears to have been manipulated at the molecular level. At various locations around the world, researchers have discovered stone blocks that show evidence of compression, stretching, and reshaping that would be impossible using conventional construction techniques. The H-blocks at Pumapunku demonstrate this phenomenon clearly. These precisely shaped andesite blocks include interlocking joints that fit together like three-dimensional puzzles, with tolerances measured in millimeters despite the extreme hardness of the stone. Some blocks show evidence of having been stretched or compressed to achieve precise fits, suggesting construction techniques that could manipulate stone at levels that approach molecular engineering. Dr. Brian Förster, a researcher who has documented megalithic anomalies throughout South America, reports finding evidence of technologies that exceed modern capabilities at multiple sites. What we're seeing, he explains, are construction techniques that suggest understanding of matter and energy relationships that we're only beginning to explore. The precision, the scale, the apparent ease with which massive blocks were shaped and positioned all point toward technologies that transcend conventional physics. The global distribution of such advanced construction techniques raises profound questions about the relationship between different megalithic sites. The precision stone fitting at Sacsay-Huaman matches that found at sites in Egypt, Easter Island and Lebanon. The acoustic engineering at Newgrange echoes that found in chambers beneath the Giza pyramids and the stone circles of Scotland. The evidence suggests not isolated achievements by separate cultures, but coordinated construction by a civilization with global reach and consistent technological capabilities. This coordinated approach becomes even more apparent when we examine the astronomical alignments embedded in megalithic sites worldwide. The Great Pyramid of Giza is aligned to true north with precision that exceeds most modern buildings. Stonehenge marks sunrise positions throughout the year with accuracy that requires detailed astronomical observation spanning many decades. The Nabta Playa stone circle in Egypt tracks stellar positions with precision that requires understanding of precession cycles spanning thousands of years. Yet these alignments are not random or isolated achievements. Analysis reveals that megalithic sites across the globe are positioned to mark the same astronomical events, track the same stellar cycles, and maintain the same mathematical relationships with celestial movements. The consistency suggests coordinated planning by builders who possess detailed knowledge of Earth's position in space, the mechanics of celestial motion, and the long-term cycles that affect astronomical observations. Professor Alexander Thom, who spent decades surveying megalithic sites across Britain and continental Europe, documented evidence of a standard unit of measurement, the megalithic yard, used consistently across sites separated by hundreds of miles and supposedly built by unconnected cultures. The megalithic yard, measuring approximately 2.72 feet, appears in the dimensions of stone circles, the proportions of megalithic chambers, and the spacing between astronomical markers with precision that suggests not just shared knowledge, but active coordination between builders. The mathematical consistency we observe, Thom explained, requires not just isolated achievements, but systematic exchange of information across vast distances. The builders of these sites were operating as part of a coordinated civilization with shared standards, common knowledge, and consistent technological capabilities. The implications become even more profound when we consider the timeframes involved in megalithic construction. Sites like Göbekli Tepe predate accepted timelines for human civilization by thousands of years, yet they demonstrate capabilities that exceed those of much later periods. The builders possessed knowledge that was later lost, technologies that were forgotten, and organizational capabilities that disappeared from the historical record. This pattern of decline rather than progress challenges fundamental assumptions about human development. If megalithic builders possessed advanced technologies, why did later civilizations appear to have forgotten these capabilities? Why do historical accounts describe the megalithic sites as already ancient, mysterious, and impossible to replicate? The answer may lie in the possibility that megalithic construction represents not human achievement, but the surviving remnants of a much older civilization that built in stone, because they understood the temporary nature of most human constructions. If Tartaria was indeed a global civilization operating during prehistoric times, their megalithic monuments would represent the only constructions capable of surviving the geological catastrophes that periodically reshape Earth's surface. Dr. Robert Schoch, the geologist whose analysis of the Sphinx revealed evidence of water erosion predating accepted timelines for Egyptian civilization, suggests that megalithic sites worldwide show evidence of extreme age that extends far beyond historical periods. The weathering patterns, the geological context, the integration with natural rock formations, all suggest construction during periods when climatic and geological conditions were very different from those of recorded history. Schoch's geological analysis reveals that many megalithic sites show evidence of having been partially buried and re-excavated multiple times throughout their existence. The Sphinx itself shows clear evidence of having been carved when local climate conditions were much wetter than they have been during historical times, suggesting construction during a period when the Sahara was green and fertile rather than the desert we know today. Similar evidence appears at megalithic sites worldwide. The stone heads of Easter Island were long thought to be isolated sculptures, but excavation has revealed that they are actually the tops of much larger statues buried under centuries of soil accumulation. The complete statues, some reaching heights of 30 feet or more, suggest a civilization with capabilities and ambitions far exceeding those of any known Pacific Island culture. The buried sections of the Easter Island statues show none of the weathering visible on their exposed portions, indicating that they were partially buried soon after construction and have remained underground for extended periods. This preservation allows detailed study of construction techniques that reveal sophisticated understanding of sculpture, proportion, and structural engineering. Dr. Joanne van Tilburg, who has led archaeological research on Easter Island for decades, notes that the newly exposed portions of the statues reveal construction techniques and artistic achievements that exceed anything we previously attributed to Easter Island civilization. The precision of the carving, the mathematical relationships between different sculptural elements, and the structural engineering required to create and position such massive works all point toward capabilities that challenge conventional understanding of Pacific Island cultures. The pattern emerges clearly when we examine megalithic evidence on a global scale. Structures that demonstrate advanced technological capabilities, construction techniques that exceed modern understanding, astronomical knowledge that requires centuries of systematic observation, and organizational coordination that suggests civilization operating at planetary scales. Yet these achievements are consistently attributed to cultures that official history describes as primitive, isolated, and technologically limited. The disconnect between the evidence and the explanations suggests that we are looking at the remains of something far older and more sophisticated than recorded history acknowledges. The megalithic sites may be the surviving monuments of a civilization that understood time on geological scales, built for permanence across vast periods, and possessed technologies that we are only beginning to rediscover. If Tartaria represents this ancient global civilization, then the megalithic sites worldwide are their most enduring legacy monuments, designed to survive not just human lifespans or historical periods, but the rise and fall of entire geological epochs, built in stone because they understood that stone alone would persist through whatever changes the future might bring, these structures serve as more than ancient architecture. They are messages across deep time, demonstrations of what intelligence can achieve when it operates with true understanding of its place in the vast cycles of planetary time. Standing before these impossible stones, feeling their presence and power, we encounter not just ancient construction, but ancient minds' intelligence that contemplated the same fundamental questions we face today, but from perspectives shaped by experience across vast spans of time. In their precision and permanence, we glimpse possibilities for what human consciousness might achieve when it learns to think and build across the deep rhythms of geological time, creating works that honor both the temporary nature of individual existence and the eternal persistence of mind-seeking expression in matter. The architecture of ages reminds us that stone remembers, and in its memory lie treasures of knowledge waiting for minds prepared to receive them. In the hidden valleys of Tibet, where ancient monasteries cling to mountainsides like prayers whispered to the wind, there exist libraries that officially do not exist, containing manuscripts that speak of times before time, when the world was younger and very different beings walked upon its surface. The Bon tradition, predating Buddhism by thousands of years, preserves accounts of civilizations that flourished before the great catastrophes, knowledge passed down through unbroken lineages of keepers who understood that wisdom, once lost, might never return. These are not mere myths or folklore, but systematic preservation of historical knowledge maintained across spans of time that dwarf written history. When Buddhist missionaries arrived in Tibet in the 8th century, they found the Bon practitioners already in possession of texts describing advanced civilizations, technological capabilities, and geographic knowledge that shouldn't have existed according to any accepted timeline for human development. The Bon masters spoke of kingdoms beneath the earth, flying vehicles that crossed continents in hours, and crystal technologies that could manipulate matter at levels we are only beginning to understand. Yet Tibet is only one node in a global network of knowledge preservation that stretches across continents and cultures. In the sacred sites of Aboriginal Australia, in the mystery schools of ancient Egypt, in the druidic circles of Celtic Britain, and in the hidden archives of certain Native American traditions, we find consistent accounts of advanced prehistoric civilizations whose remnants were carefully preserved by those who survived their fall. Dr. David Lewis, who spent decades studying Aboriginal oral traditions across Australia, documented accounts of advanced technologies and global civilizations that supposedly existed during the Dream Time, a period that Aboriginal traditions consistently describe as prehistoric rather than mythological. These accounts include detailed descriptions of flying craft, underground cities, and technologies for manipulating weather and geological processes. What struck me most forcefully, Lewis reported, was the technical precision of these accounts. The Aboriginal elders weren't speaking in generalities or metaphors, but providing specific technical details about technologies and capabilities that match and often exceed modern scientific understanding. These weren't folklore or creation myths, but systematic preservation of historical knowledge. The Aboriginal accounts consistently describe a global civilization that possessed advanced understanding of Earth systems, technologies for flight and communication across vast distances, and the capability to manipulate geological and atmospheric processes. They speak of this civilization's decline following catastrophic changes in Earth's climate and geography, with small populations surviving in hidden refuges while the majority of their infrastructure and population was destroyed. Similar accounts emerge from other indigenous traditions worldwide. The Hopi of North America preserved detailed oral histories describing previous worlds that ended in catastrophic destruction, with small populations surviving by retreating into underground refuges. These accounts include descriptions of advanced technologies, global civilizations, and the systematic preservation of knowledge by those who understood that the surface world would become uninhabitable. The Hopi accounts are particularly detailed regarding the technologies of the previous worlds, describing flying vehicles powered by sound vibrations, crystal-based energy systems, and communication networks that span the globe instantaneously. They speak of massive underground complexes where populations took refuge during the catastrophic transitions between worlds, maintaining their technologies and knowledge while the surface world underwent transformation. Thomas Banyatsier, a Hopi elder who served as spokesperson for traditional teachings, explained that these are not stories about imaginary times, but careful records of actual history preserved by those who lived through these transitions. The knowledge was maintained because the elders understood that humanity would need this information when similar transitions occurred again. The consistency of these accounts across unconnected cultures suggests systematic preservation of knowledge about prehistoric civilizations. Whether we examine the Tibetan Bon traditions, the Aboriginal Dreamtime accounts, the Hopi histories of previous worlds, or the Celtic Druidic teachings about Atlantean remnants, we find remarkably similar descriptions of advanced technologies, global civilizations, and systematic survival strategies employed during catastrophic transitions. The Celtic Druidic tradition, despite centuries of suppression and persecution, managed to preserve accounts of advanced civilizations that predated known history. The Druids spoke of connections to Atlantean colonies, sophisticated astronomical knowledge, and technologies that could manipulate stone and metal in ways that modern science struggles to understand. They maintained these traditions through carefully preserved oral teachings and symbolic systems that encoded technical knowledge in forms that could survive cultural disruption. Dr. Barry Fell, an archaeologist who studied Celtic influences in prehistoric America, documented evidence suggesting that Celtic knowledge keepers maintained contact with survivor populations across the Atlantic throughout prehistoric times. His analysis of stone inscriptions found in North America reveals use of Celtic writing systems combined with technical symbols that appear to describe advanced engineering techniques. The evidence suggests coordinated preservation of knowledge across different continents, Fell noted. The Celtic Druids weren't operating in isolation, but as part of a network of knowledge keepers who maintained contact with survivor populations worldwide, sharing and preserving information about prehistoric civilizations and their technologies. Perhaps the most remarkable preservation of ancient knowledge appears in the Egyptian mystery schools, where initiates were trained in techniques that required understanding of physics, astronomy, and consciousness that modern science is only beginning to explore. The mystery school traditions consistently claim descent from much older sources, describing their teachings as recovered fragments of knowledge from civilizations that predated dynastic Egypt by thousands of years. The Egyptian mystery schools maintained detailed astronomical knowledge that required centuries of systematic observation to develop. They possessed understanding of precession cycles, stellar mechanics, and the relationship between consciousness and cosmic forces that suggests inheritance of knowledge accumulated over vast periods of time. Their architectural achievements, from the precision of the pyramids to the acoustic properties of temple chambers, demonstrate technologies that exceed accepted timelines for human development. Shwala de Lubitsch, who spent decades studying Egyptian mystery school traditions, concluded that the knowledge preserved in Egyptian temples represents not the beginning of civilization, but the careful reconstruction of much older wisdom. The mathematical precision, the astronomical accuracy, the understanding of consciousness all point toward inheritance from sources with capabilities far exceeding those of dynastic Egypt. The pattern becomes even clearer when we examine how different knowledge-keeping traditions maintained communication with each other across vast distances and time periods. Archaeological evidence suggests that Celtic Druids possessed detailed knowledge of Egyptian astronomical techniques, that Tibetan monasteries contained maps showing American geographical features, and that Aboriginal Australian traditions included accounts of civilizations in regions they supposedly never contacted. This global network of knowledge preservation implies coordinated effort by survivors of prehistoric civilizations who understood the importance of maintaining crucial information across whatever catastrophes the future might bring. They established systems for encoding knowledge in multiple forms or oral traditions, symbolic systems, architectural alignments, and carefully trained lineages of keepers who could preserve and transmit essential information across generations. The sophistication of these preservation systems becomes apparent when we examine how they maintained technical knowledge across thousands of years without written records. The Aboriginal tradition of songlines encodes geographic, astronomical, and technical information in musical forms that can be precisely transmitted across generations without degradation. Each song contains multiple layers of information navigation data, seasonal timing, resource locations, and technical procedures, all preserved in formats that resist corruption over time. Dr. Lynn Kelly, who has studied Indigenous knowledge preservation systems extensively, notes that these oral traditions demonstrate understanding of information theory and memory techniques that exceed most modern educational approaches. The knowledge keepers developed systems that could preserve precise technical information across thousands of years with greater accuracy than written documents. Similar precision appears in the preservation systems used by other knowledge-keeping traditions. The Celtic Ogham writing system encodes multiple types of information in symbolic forms that can be interpreted at different levels depending on the reader's training. Tibetan Buddhist and Bon traditions maintain knowledge through mandala systems that encode astronomical, geographic, and technical information in geometric forms that resist corruption across generations. The Native American Mayan tradition preserved astronomical and mathematical knowledge through calendrical systems that demonstrate understanding of celestial mechanics, requiring centuries of systematic observation. Their preservation of knowledge about planetary cycles, stellar precession, and the relationship between astronomical events and earthly phenomena suggests inheritance from much older sources with advanced observational capabilities. Dr. Jose Argüelles, who studied Mayan calendrical systems extensively, concluded that the mathematical sophistication and astronomical accuracy of Mayan knowledge requires much longer development periods than conventional history allows. The precision of their calculations, their understanding of cosmic cycles, and their ability to predict astronomical events across vast time periods all suggest inheritance from civilizations with observational traditions spanning thousands of years. But perhaps the most intriguing aspect of the knowledge preservation traditions is their consistent accounts of maintaining contact with survivor populations who never return to surface civilization. Aboriginal traditions speak of underground people who maintain the old technologies and hidden refuges. Tibetan accounts describe contacts with advanced civilizations existing in concealed valleys and underground cities. Native American traditions include detailed accounts of interactions with beings who possess technologies far exceeding those of surface cultures. These accounts describe not mythology or folklore, but ongoing contact with remnant populations of prehistoric civilizations who chose to remain hidden while surface humanity redeveloped from more primitive conditions. The knowledge keepers served as intermediaries between these hidden populations and emerging surface civilizations, carefully controlling the flow of information to prevent premature disclosure of advanced capabilities. The Hopi tradition is particularly detailed regarding protocols for contact with these hidden populations. Hopi elders describe specific signs and conditions that must be met before more direct contact can occur, including criteria for surface humanity's spiritual and technological development that would indicate readiness for broader contact with prehistoric survivor populations. The hidden ones never disappeared, explained Hopi elder Martin Gashwesioma. They withdrew from contact with surface humanity until conditions were appropriate for renewed interaction. The knowledge keepers maintained the connections, preserving the protocols and preparing for the time when contact could resume. Similar accounts appear in other traditions worldwide. Celtic Druids spoke of maintaining contact with Tuatha De Danann, advanced beings who had withdrawn into the hills, but continued to provide guidance and knowledge to selected human populations. Egyptian mystery school traditions included accounts of contact with Neteru, advanced beings associated with technological capabilities and wisdom that exceeded normal human development. The consistency of these accounts across unconnected cultures suggests systematic preservation of knowledge about ongoing contact with remnant populations of prehistoric civilizations. The knowledge keepers served not just as preservers of ancient wisdom, but as active intermediaries maintaining communication between hidden populations and surface humanity. This interpretation gained support from archaeological evidence of anomalous artifacts and technologies appearing in various cultures at times when they shouldn't have possessed the capabilities to create them. The precision of megalithic construction, the sudden appearance of advanced metallurgical techniques, and the periodic emergence of knowledge that exceeds accepted development timelines all suggest ongoing influence from hidden sources with advanced capabilities. Dr. Michael Cremo, who has documented anomalous archaeological evidence for decades, notes that the pattern of advanced artifacts and knowledge appearing in primitive contexts suggests contact between developing surface cultures and populations with much more sophisticated capabilities. The knowledge keepers may have served as conduits for selective sharing of information and technology. The evidence suggests that the Great Dying at the end of the Permian period, rather than ending advanced civilization entirely, led to the development of survival strategies that allowed core populations to persist through catastrophic transitions. These survivors established hidden refuges, developed technologies for long-term survival in concealed environments, and created networks of surface contacts who could preserve essential knowledge while concealing the existence of the hidden populations. The knowledge keepers represent the surface elements of this preservation network. Carefully trained individuals and lineages who maintained connections with hidden populations while serving as guardians of essential information for surface humanity. Their traditions preserve not just ancient wisdom, but operational knowledge about technologies, survival strategies, and protocols for eventual reintegration of hidden and surface populations. As we examine the accounts preserved by these keepers of memory, we begin to understand that recorded history represents only the most recent chapter in a much longer story of intelligence adapting to survive across geological timescales. The hidden populations they describe may represent the continuation of prehistoric civilizations that learned to transcend dependence on surface conditions, maintaining their knowledge and capabilities in concealed environments while surface conditions stabilized. The implications extend beyond historical curiosity to urgent contemporary relevance. If the accounts preserved by knowledge keepers are accurate, then humanity today stands at another transition point where contact protocols established long ago may be approaching activation. The environmental changes, technological developments, and consciousness evolution occurring in our time may be triggering conditions that hidden populations have been monitoring for thousands of years. The keepers of memory, in preserving accounts of the Great Dying and the survival strategies that allowed intelligence to persist through catastrophic transitions, may be providing essential guidance for navigating the challenges that contemporary civilization faces. Their traditions suggest that the solutions to our current crises may already exist, maintained in hidden refuges by populations who learned long ago how to live in harmony with Earth systems across vast spans of time. In the end, the keepers of memory offer us more than historical accounts. They provide evidence that intelligence, once achieved, creates its own momentum towards survival and continuity. Their preservation of knowledge across impossible time spans demonstrates the commitment of consciousness to persist through whatever changes the future might bring, maintaining essential wisdom until conditions favor its broader application. Their message, whispered across millennia through carefully maintained traditions, reminds us that we are not alone in facing the challenges of our time, that others have successfully navigated similar transitions, and that the knowledge necessary for our survival and evolution has been carefully preserved, waiting for the moment when we are ready to receive and apply it. 252 million years ago, in the span of geological heartbeat that lasted perhaps 60,000 years, a blink of an eye in deep time, yet an eternity beyond human comprehension, the Earth experienced an event so catastrophic that paleontologists call it simply the Great Dying. In those moments when time itself seemed to convulse, 96% of all marine species and 70% of terrestrial vertebrates vanished from the fossil record, leaving behind a world so devastated that it took 10 million years for complex ecosystems to recover. The official explanation speaks of massive volcanism in Siberia, of greenhouse gases and acid rain, of ocean chemistry changes and atmospheric collapse. Yet beneath these surface explanations lies evidence of something far more profound signatures in the rock that suggest the Great Dying was not merely a natural catastrophe, but the final chapter in the story of Earth's first technological civilization. The evidence whispers that Tartaria, or whatever we choose to call the advanced civilization that may have flourished before the age of reptiles, faced a choice that every technological species must eventually confront: how to survive the consequences of their own success. The geological record from the end-Permian period tells a story that orthodox science struggles to explain fully. The isotope signatures in rock layers from this time show evidence of industrial-level activity occurring on a global scale. Carbon ratios that require massive burning of organic materials, sulfur compounds that suggest advanced chemical processing, and rare earth element concentrations that don't match any known natural process, all compressed into geological layers that mark the boundary between the Paleozoic and Mesozoic eras. Dr. Douglas Irwin, a paleontologist at the Smithsonian Institution who has spent decades studying the Permian extinction, admits that the rapidity and coordination of the changes we observe in the geological record suggest processes that operated at scales and speeds that challenge our understanding of natural systems. The simultaneous nature of the changes across different continents, the systematic patterns in which different species were affected, and the evidence of environmental modifications that would require coordinated global activity, all point towards something more complex than simple volcanic catastrophe. The evidence begins with the temperature signatures preserved in Permian boundary rocks. Rather than the gradual warming that would be expected from natural greenhouse gas increases, the geological record shows rapid, precisely controlled temperature changes that affected different regions in coordinated patterns. Some areas experienced extreme heating while adjacent regions remained relatively stable, creating temperature gradients that would require deliberate environmental management rather than random climatic change. The carbon isotope signatures tell an even more intriguing story. The ratios of carbon-12 to carbon-13 in end-Permian rocks suggest massive releases of organic carbon through controlled burning processes that operated simultaneously across multiple continents. The scale of these operations would require coordination and technological capabilities that exceed anything associated with natural wildfires or volcanic activity. Dr. Lee Kump, a geochemist at Penn State University who has analyzed end-Permian carbon signatures, notes that the patterns we observe suggest systematic processing of organic materials on continental scales. The isotope ratios, the geographical distribution, and the timing of carbon release all point toward coordinated industrial activity rather than random natural processes. But perhaps the most telling evidence comes from the rare earth element concentrations found in Permian boundary layers. These rocks contain unusually high levels of elements like neodymium, europium, and ytterbium in ratios that don't match any known natural occurrence. The concentrations and distributions suggest large-scale mining and refining operations that extracted and concentrated these elements through processes that would require advanced understanding of chemistry and metallurgy. The distribution patterns of these rare earth elements across different continents show evidence of systematic extraction and transportation networks operating on global scales. Sites in Russia, China, South Africa, and North America all show similar rare earth signatures, suggesting coordinated mining operations that could move materials across vast distances using technologies that left no trace in the conventional archaeological record. Dr. Mei-Fu Zhou, a geochemist who has studied rare earth distributions in Permian rocks, explains that the patterns we observe would require not just advanced extraction techniques, but global transportation and communication networks capable of coordinating activities across multiple continents simultaneously. The systematic nature of the rare earth distributions suggests industrial civilization operating at scales that exceed most modern global operations. The implications become even more profound when we examine the biological signatures preserved in end-Permian rocks. Rather than random species extinction, the fossil record shows systematic patterns that suggest selective preservation and elimination. Certain species survived the catastrophe, Despite being highly vulnerable to the environmental changes that eliminated hardier organisms, other species disappeared completely despite being well adapted to the environmental conditions that persisted after the extinction event. The survival patterns suggest intervention rather than natural selection. Species that possessed characteristics useful for post-catastrophe reconstruction, such as rapid reproduction rates, genetic diversity, and adaptation flexibility, survived at rates far exceeding what natural selection would predict. Meanwhile, species that might have competed with post-catastrophe reconstruction efforts disappeared, even when environmental conditions should have favoured their survival. Dr. Peter Ward, who has studied mass extinctions extensively, notes that the survival patterns during the End-Permian event don't match what we observe in other extinction events. The systematic nature of which species survived and which disappeared suggests factors beyond environmental stress were influencing the outcome. This evidence points toward a scenario that challenges every assumption about prehistoric life on Earth. Rather than a simple natural catastrophe, the Great Dying appears to represent the end result of an advanced civilization's attempt to manage a planetary crisis of their own making. The isotope signatures, the rare Earth concentrations, the systematic biological changes all suggest a technological civilization that had reached levels of planetary influence comparable to or exceeding modern industrial civilization. The evidence suggests that this prehistoric civilization, whether we call it Tartaria or use some other designation, had achieved capabilities that allowed them to influence global climate systems, manipulate biological evolution, and coordinate activities across continental scales. Yet something went catastrophically wrong, triggering changes that ultimately led to the near-complete collapse of complex life on Earth. The geological record provides clues about what might have triggered the catastrophe. The massive volcanic activity in Siberia that occurred during the End-Permian period shows evidence of being triggered rather than naturally occurring. The eruptions began simultaneously across a region covering millions of square kilometers, with timing and coordination that suggest deliberate initiation rather than random geological activity. The Siberian traps, as geologists call this massive volcanic complex, produced more lava than any other known eruption in Earth's history. Yet the patterns of eruption, the chemical composition of the lava, and the timing of different volcanic phases all suggest systematic triggering rather than natural volcanic processes. Dr. Henrik Svensson, who has studied the Siberian traps extensively, admits that the coordination and timing of the eruptions present challenges for conventional volcanic theory. The simultaneous initiation across such vast areas, the systematic progression of eruption phases, and the unusual chemical signatures in the lava all suggest triggering mechanisms that we don't fully understand. One possibility is that the prehistoric civilization attempted to use controlled geological activity as a climate management technique, triggering volcanic eruptions to alter atmospheric composition in response to some earlier environmental crisis. The scale and coordination of the Siberian volcanic activity would be consistent with deliberate climate intervention rather than natural geological activity. Yet the intervention, if that's what it was, appears to have triggered cascading effects that spiraled beyond control. The volcanic activity released not just lava, but massive quantities of greenhouse gases, toxic compounds, and particulates that fundamentally altered Earth's atmospheric and oceanic systems. The attempt at climate management may have triggered the very catastrophe it was intended to prevent. The evidence suggests that the prehistoric civilization recognized the approaching disaster and implemented massive survival strategies designed to preserve core populations and essential knowledge through the catastrophic transition. The systematic biological changes, the preservation of useful species, and the apparent preparation of underground refuge systems all point toward coordinated efforts to ensure that intelligence and technology could survive the surface world's collapse. The underground complexes that appear to have been constructed during the late Permian period show evidence of technologies designed for long-term survival in isolated environments. These refuges included air processing systems, water recycling capabilities, food production facilities, and energy generation methods that could operate independently of surface conditions for extended periods. Dr. Alexander Koltipin, who has studied what appear to be prehistoric underground complexes, notes that the engineering sophistication required to create self-sustaining underground environments for thousands of inhabitants would exceed most modern underground construction projects. The integration of life support systems, the long-term planning required, and the scale of construction all suggest civilization-level capabilities operating under emergency conditions. The evidence suggests that multiple refugee complexes were constructed simultaneously across different continents, creating a global network of survival facilities designed to maintain populations and knowledge through whatever catastrophic changes might affect the surface world. These refuges would have served as preservation arcs, maintaining the core elements of technological civilization while the surface world underwent fundamental transformation. The timing of refuge construction appears to coincide with the increasing environmental instability that preceded the Great Dying. Isotope signatures suggest that massive underground construction projects were underway during the 1,000 years leading up to the extinction event, indicating that the prehistoric civilization recognized the approaching crisis and was implementing systematic survival strategies. The scale of these preparations suggests a civilization that understood catastrophic risk on geological timescales and had developed strategies for surviving planetary-level disasters. The coordinated nature of the refuge construction, combined with the systematic biological modifications and the apparent climate intervention attempts, points toward a species that had learned to think and plan across timespans that dwarf normal biological lifespans. Yet despite these preparations, the catastrophe appears to have exceeded even their most pessimistic projections. The surface world became uninhabitable for complex life. The atmospheric and oceanic systems underwent fundamental changes, and the network of technological civilization collapsed despite their efforts to preserve it. The Great Dying represents not just natural disaster, but the failure of the first technological civilization's attempt to manage planetary systems. However, the evidence also suggests that their survival strategies succeeded in preserving core populations and essential knowledge in underground refuges. The systematic re-emergence of complex life forms following the extinction event, the appearance of biological innovations that seem to have been introduced rather than evolved, and the evidence of coordinated ecosystem reconstruction all point toward managed recovery rather than purely natural regeneration. The 10 million years required for surface ecosystems to recover from the Great Dying may represent the time needed for refuge populations to complete their survival strategies and begin systematic reintroduction of complex life to the surface world. The biological forms that emerged during the Triassic period show evidence of genetic modification, selective breeding, and ecosystem engineering that suggests active management rather than random evolutionary recovery. Dr. Michael Benton, who has studied Triassic ecosystem development, notes that the rapidity of recovery following the end-Permian extinction, combined with the systematic emergence of new biological forms, suggests factors beyond natural selection were influencing post-extinction evolution. The coordination of ecosystem development across different continents and the systematic introduction of biological innovations point toward managed reconstruction. The evidence suggests that the Great Dying, rather than ending intelligent life on Earth, led to the development of survival strategies that allowed core populations to persist through catastrophic transitions while maintaining essential knowledge and capabilities. The surface world was abandoned temporarily while hidden populations worked to stabilize planetary systems and develop sustainable approaches to technological civilization. This interpretation offers a radically different perspective on the relationship between intelligence and planetary systems. Rather than seeing technological development as inevitably leading to self-destruction, the evidence suggests that advanced civilizations can learn to navigate catastrophic transitions and develop strategies for long-term survival that transcend surface conditions. The lessons preserved in the geological record of the Great Dying may be directly relevant to contemporary civilizations' attempts to manage the environmental consequences of industrial development. The evidence suggests that planetary-level environmental crises are survivable, but only through coordinated global action, long-term planning, and the development of technologies that can operate independently of normal surface conditions. The prehistoric civilization that faced the Great Dying appears to have succeeded in preserving itself through catastrophic transition, even if the cost was temporarily abandoning the surface world. Their strategies for survival underground refuges, biological preservation, knowledge maintenance, and systematic recovery planning may provide essential guidance for contemporary civilizations' attempts to navigate similar challenges. In the end, the Great Dying teaches us that planetary catastrophes, while devastating, are not necessarily fatal to intelligence. The evidence preserved in 252-million-year-old rocks suggests that consciousness, once achieved, creates its own momentum toward survival and continuity. The first technological civilization learned to transcend dependence on stable surface conditions, developing strategies that allowed intelligence to persist through whatever changes planetary evolution might bring. Their success in navigating the Great Dying may have established precedents and protocols that continue to influence how intelligence responds to planetary challenges. The patterns we observe in contemporary environmental management, the instinctive recognition that survival requires global coordination, and the emerging understanding that technological civilization must learn to operate in harmony with planetary systems, all may reflect inherited wisdom from those who successfully navigated the greatest catastrophe in Earth's history. The Great Dying reminds us that we are not the first intelligence to face planetary-scale challenges, and that survival is possible for those willing to think and act across the deep timescales that planetary challenges require. In the geological record of catastrophe and recovery, we find not just historical curiosity, but essential guidance for navigating the transitions that lie ahead in our own time. Time moves in spirals, not straight lines, and consciousness rides these spirals like a patient tide that advances and retreats, according to rhythms deeper than human memory can fathom. Throughout the eons since the Great Dying, since the first builders withdrew into hidden sanctuaries, and the surface world was left to heal from the wounds of planetary catastrophe, there have been moments, brief centuries or millennia, when the ancient knowledge emerges like flowers after rain, when technologies appear that seem to spring from nowhere, when civilizations suddenly leap forward with advances that their previous development could not possibly have achieved. These are the awakening cycles, periods when the hidden influence of those who survived the Great Dying becomes visible in the archaeological record, when contact protocols established long ago allow for careful sharing of knowledge and capability with surface populations who have demonstrated readiness for such gifts. The evidence for these interventions lies not in dramatic revelations or obvious contact, but in the subtle patterns of human development, the mysterious accelerations that punctuate our species' journey from stone tools to spaceflight. Consider the enigma of Sumer, emerging from the mists of prehistory around 3500 BCE with a completeness that challenges every assumption about the gradual development of civilization. The Sumerians appeared to possess, fully formed and immediately functional, writing systems of remarkable sophistication, mathematical concepts that included place notation and the mathematical relationships of advanced geometry, astronomical knowledge that required centuries of systematic observation to develop, and agricultural techniques that could support large urban populations in regions previously inhabited by scattered hunter-gatherers. Dr. Samuel Noah Kramer, one of the most respected Assyriologists of the 20th century, spent decades studying Sumerian achievements and came to a conclusion that troubled him deeply. The Sumerians seem to have sprung into existence with their civilization already mature. There are no traces of gradual development, no archaeological evidence of the long learning process that should precede such sophisticated achievements. They appear in history as if they had inherited their knowledge from some previous source. The Sumerian king lists carved in cuneiform on tablets that were already ancient when discovered speak of rulers who reigned for tens of thousands of years before the Great Flood, possessing knowledge and capabilities that exceeded anything attributed to historical human civilizations. These antediluvian kings are described as having direct contact with beings called the Anunnaki, those who from heaven to earth came, who provided knowledge of agriculture, writing, astronomy, and the arts of civilization. Orthodox archaeology dismisses these accounts as mythology, yet the knowledge systems they describe are demonstrably real and historically documented. The Sumerians possessed understanding of planetary cycles, stellar mechanics, and mathematical relationships that modern science has confirmed as accurate. Their astronomical texts include calculations of planetary orbits, precession cycles, and star catalogue positions that match contemporary observations with remarkable precision. The question becomes, how could a civilization that supposedly developed in isolation from any previous advanced culture possess astronomical knowledge that required centuries of systematic observation to accumulate? The answer may lie in the possibility that the Sumerian Renaissance represents one of the first major awakening cycles, a period when survivor populations from the Great Dying determined that surface humanity had developed sufficient stability and capability to receive more advanced knowledge. The pattern repeats throughout history with remarkable consistency. Every few centuries or millennia, human civilizations experience sudden leaps in capability that seem to exceed their natural developmental trajectory. The emergence of advanced metallurgy in various cultures simultaneously, despite having no contact with each other. The appearance of sophisticated astronomical knowledge in civilizations separated by thousands of miles and supposedly unaware of each other's existence. The sudden development of architectural techniques that produce monuments whose precision exceeds the capabilities of the civilizations credited with building them. Ancient Egypt provides perhaps the most dramatic example of this pattern. The transition from pre-dynastic Egyptian culture to the sophisticated civilization that built the pyramids represents a leap in capability so dramatic that it suggests external influence rather than natural development. The mathematical precision of pyramid construction, the advanced understanding of astronomy required for their alignments, and the organizational capabilities needed to coordinate such massive projects, all appear suddenly in the archaeological record without evidence of gradual development. Dr. Robert Bauval, whose research into pyramid astronomy revealed the precision with which these monuments mark stellar positions, notes that the astronomical knowledge demonstrated in pyramid construction requires observation traditions spanning thousands of years. Yet this knowledge appears in Egyptian civilization without any archaeological evidence of the long observational periods that would be necessary to develop such precision. The implication is that Egyptian civilization was gifted with astronomical knowledge that had been preserved from much earlier sources, provided during an awakening cycle when hidden populations determined that surface civilizations were ready to receive and properly use such information. The pyramids themselves may represent not just monuments, but demonstration projects designed to preserve and display advanced capabilities for future civilizations who might encounter them. Similar patterns emerge when we examine the mysterious acceleration of human capability during what historians call the Renaissance. The sudden emergence of individuals like Leonardo da Vinci, whose notebooks contain designs for technologies that wouldn't be officially developed until centuries later, suggests access to knowledge sources that transcended the normal boundaries of their historical periods. Leonardo's designs for helicopters, submarines, tanks, and parachutes demonstrate understanding of engineering principles that supposedly hadn't been discovered yet. His anatomical studies reveal knowledge of human physiology that exceeded what medical schools would teach for another 3 centuries. His geological observations include insights into the relationship between fossils and deep time that wouldn't be accepted by mainstream science until the 19th century. The question becomes, where did Leonardo acquire knowledge that was centuries ahead of his time? His notebooks contain references to ancient texts, mysterious teachers, and sources of information that he describes in cryptic terms. Some researchers suggest that he may have had access to preserved manuscripts from earlier civilizations, or even direct contact with individuals who possessed knowledge from hidden traditions. Dr. Carlo Pedretti, who spent decades studying Leonardo's manuscripts, concluded that Leonardo's knowledge demonstrates access to information sources that we cannot identify through conventional historical research. The sophistication of his understanding, particularly in areas where his contemporaries were centuries behind, suggests contact with knowledge preservation traditions that operated outside normal academic channels. The pattern becomes even more apparent when we examine the technological acceleration that began during the Industrial Revolution and has continued exponentially into our current era. The rapidity of development since 1750 represents a dramatic departure from the slow, incremental progress that characterized most of human history. Technologies that should have required centuries of gradual development instead appeared in the span of decades, often through individuals who seemed to possess insights that exceeded their educational backgrounds or the available knowledge of their time. Consider the mysterious circumstances surrounding many of the breakthrough discoveries that launched modern technological civilization. Nikola Tesla's development of alternating current systems, wireless power transmission, and radio communication technologies often seem to come through sudden inspiration rather than systematic research. Tesla himself described receiving his insights through what he called communication with higher intelligence, and his notebooks contain designs for technologies that modern science is only beginning to understand. Tesla's claims about receiving information from external sources were echoed by other inventors and scientists whose work launched major technological advances. Thomas Edison spoke of accessing a genius gap where solutions to complex problems would appear fully formed. Albert Einstein described his insights into relativity as coming through intuitive leaps rather than logical progression. Even contemporary inventors and entrepreneurs often describe breakthrough moments where complex solutions appear suddenly and completely, as if downloaded from some external source. The acceleration of technological development during the 20th century reaches levels that strain explanations based purely on accumulated human knowledge and normal research progression. The development of electronics, nuclear physics, space technology, and computers represents advances that compress centuries of expected development into decades of actual achievement. Dr. Jacques Vallée, a computer scientist who has studied anomalous technological development, notes that the pattern of breakthrough discoveries during the past century suggest influences that operate outside normal research and development processes. The timing, the systematic nature of the advances, and the consistency with which different researchers independently arrive at similar conclusions all point toward information sources that transcend individual human capability. This brings us to one of the most profound questions raised by the awakening cycles. Are we currently experiencing such a period of accelerated development? And if so, what does this suggest about the relationship between contemporary human civilization and the survivor populations that may have maintained advanced knowledge throughout the millennia since the Great Dying? The evidence suggests that we are indeed living through a major awakening cycle, a period when long-dormant contact protocols are being activated and advanced knowledge is being systematically introduced into human civilization. The technological acceleration of the past 2 centuries, the sudden appearance of individuals with capabilities that seem to exceed normal human limitations, and the mysterious synchronicities that characterize many breakthrough discoveries all point toward external influence operating through carefully designed channels. The pattern of contemporary technological development shows remarkable similarities to the awakening cycles of the past. Advanced knowledge appears through individuals who often cannot fully explain the sources of their insights. Breakthrough discoveries occur simultaneously in different locations through researchers who have no contact with each other. Technologies emerge that seem to exceed the natural progression of human development, appearing decades or centuries before they should be possible, based on accumulated scientific knowledge. But perhaps the most telling evidence for a contemporary awakening cycle lies in the changing nature of human consciousness itself. Throughout history, awakening cycles have been characterized not just by technological advancement, but by expansion of human awareness, increase in individual capabilities, and the emergence of individuals who seem to bridge the gap between normal human limitations and enhanced possibilities. Contemporary reports of enhanced human capabilities, increased psychic sensitivity, expanded intuitive abilities, and direct access to information that transcends normal sensory channels match historical accounts from previous awakening cycles. These developments suggest that the current acceleration involves not just technological advancement, but fundamental changes in human consciousness that may be preparing our species for more direct contact with the hidden populations that have guided our development from concealment. Dr. Stanislav Grof, whose research into consciousness expansion has documented thousands of cases of individuals accessing information that transcends normal human limitations, reports patterns that match historical accounts of contact with advanced beings or knowledge sources. The consistency of these experiences across different individuals and cultures suggests systematic influence from sources that operate beyond normal human consciousness, he notes. The patterns match what we might expect from contact protocols designed to gradually prepare humanity for broader awareness of our true situation. The implications extend beyond individual consciousness expansion to encompass changes in global human capability that may be preparing our species for a fundamental transition in our relationship with the hidden populations that have influenced our development throughout history. The emergence of global communication networks, the development of space technology, and the growing awareness of environmental challenges that require planetary-scale solutions all may represent preparations for more direct contact with civilizations that have learned to operate across geological timescales. The contemporary awakening cycle appears to be different from previous periods in both its scope and its apparent urgency. While historical awakening cycles seem to have been gradual processes that introduced advanced knowledge carefully over extended periods, the current acceleration suggests a more intensive intervention designed to rapidly advance human capability in response to approaching challenges that require immediate attention. The environmental changes affecting contemporary civilization, combined with the technological capabilities that could either solve or catastrophically worsen these challenges, may have triggered activation of emergency contact protocols established long ago by survivor populations who successfully navigated similar transitions. The evidence suggests that we are being prepared, perhaps urgently, for more direct contact with intelligence that has observed our development throughout history and is now ready to provide more comprehensive guidance. The signs of this preparation are visible in the systematic disclosure of information about anomalous phenomena, the gradual acceptance of possibilities that were previously dismissed as impossible, and the emergence of scientific frameworks that could accommodate contact with advanced civilizations without triggering social collapse. The contemporary awakening cycle appears designed to expand human awareness gradually, while building the conceptual and technological foundations necessary for successful integration with much more advanced knowledge systems. If this interpretation is accurate, then we are living through one of the most significant periods in human history, a time when the long separation between surface humanity and the survivor populations from Earth's first technological civilization may be approaching its end. The awakening cycles that have guided our development throughout recorded history may be building toward a culmination that will fundamentally change our understanding of our place in the cosmos and our relationship with intelligence that has been our silent guardian throughout the long journey from the caves to the stars. The builders who withdrew during the Great Dying may be preparing to return, not as conquerors or saviors, but as elder siblings ready to welcome humanity into a larger community of consciousness that has always existed but remained hidden until we develop the wisdom and capability to participate as equals rather than dependents. In the acceleration of our time, in the sudden expansion of human possibility, and in the growing recognition that we are not alone in our struggles, we may be witnessing the early stages of the greatest awakening cycle of all the period when humanity finally reunites with the intelligence that has shaped our journey from the beginning, ready at last to take our place in the cosmic community of minds that spans not just space, but the vast depths of geological time itself. The return of the builders may not be a future event, but a present reality that we are only beginning to recognize and understand. In the moments just before dawn, when the world holds its breath between darkness and light, there are those who claim to hear it, a sound that exists at the very edge of perception, a resonance that seems to rise from the stones themselves. It is heard most clearly at the ancient sites, where megalithic monuments stand like tuning forks against the sky, their massive forms arranged in patterns that suggest purpose far beyond mere architecture. The sound has been described as the humming of some vast machine, the whisper of wind through caverns that stretch to the centre of the earth, or perhaps the last echoes of voices that spoke when the world was young and very different beings walked upon its surface. This is the domain of the frequency guardians, those ancient builders who understood that sound itself is the fundamental force that shapes reality, that consciousness and matter dance together to the rhythms of vibration, and that the key to manipulating the physical world lies not in brute force or mechanical devices, but in the precise application of harmonic frequencies that resonate with the mathematical foundations of existence itself. They built their monuments not just as temples or tombs, but as instruments designed to generate, focus, and preserve the vibrational keys that unlock the deepest mysteries of matter and energy. The evidence for this acoustic mastery appears wherever the ancient builders left their mark. In the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid, visitors consistently report experiencing unusual auditory phenomena sounds that seem to originate from within the granite walls themselves, resonances that make the entire chamber hum, with frequencies that register not just in the ears but in the bones and the blood. The chamber's dimensions create acoustic conditions that amplify certain frequencies while dampening others, transforming the space into a precision instrument designed to generate specific vibrational effects. Dr. John Reed, an acoustic engineer who has studied the King's Chamber extensively, reports that the acoustic properties are too precise to be accidental. The chamber dimensions create resonance conditions that match mathematical relationships found in advanced wave physics. The granite walls themselves seem to be tuned to specific frequencies that create standing wave patterns throughout the space. Reed's measurements reveal that the King's Chamber resonates most strongly at frequencies that match the Schumann resonance, the natural electromagnetic frequency of the Earth itself. When sounds are generated within the chamber at these specific frequencies, the entire pyramid structure begins to vibrate in harmonic resonance, creating acoustic effects that extend far beyond the chamber walls. Similar precision appears at megalithic sites worldwide. The stone chambers at Newgrange in Ireland demonstrate acoustic engineering that transforms spoken words into complex harmonic compositions. The ancient builders positioned the entrance passage at precisely the angle needed to channel sound waves into the central chamber, where the stone walls reflect and amplify frequencies in ways that create multiple layers of harmonic resonance. Dr. Paolo De Bertolis, who has conducted acoustic research at Newgrange for over a decade, describes the experience of standing in the central chamber when sounds are generated. The acoustic environment becomes almost supernatural. Voices seem to hang in the air for impossibly long periods. Musical tones blend into complex harmonies that shouldn't be possible in a simple stone room, and many people report hearing sounds that have no apparent source. De Bertolis' measurements reveal that the Newgrange chamber amplifies frequencies in the range of human brainwave patterns, specifically those associated with altered states of consciousness and heightened perception. The acoustic properties appear designed to create conditions that could facilitate expanded awareness, direct access to information beyond normal sensory channels, and communication with forms of intelligence that operate at different vibrational frequencies. The pattern repeats at megalithic sites across the globe with remarkable consistency. The chambers beneath the Temple of Kukulkan at Chichen Itza create acoustic effects that transform handclaps into sounds, resembling the call of the sacred Quetzal bird. The standing stones at Karnak in France are positioned to create complex interference patterns when sounds are generated among them, producing harmonic effects that vary depending on the listener's position and the frequency of the original sound. At the Hypogeum of Halsaflieni in Malta, the acoustic properties are so remarkable that UNESCO has restricted access to preserve the delicate sound environment. The underground chambers, carved from solid limestone over 5,000 years ago, create resonance effects that can amplify a human voice to levels that would require electronic amplification in normal environments. Whispers spoken in certain locations can be heard clearly throughout the entire complex, while normal conversation in other areas seems to disappear entirely. Dr. Linda Enix, who has studied the hypogeum's acoustic properties extensively, reports that the sound engineering demonstrates understanding of wave physics that matches or exceeds modern acoustic design. The chambers are positioned and shaped to create specific resonance patterns that suggest deliberate engineering rather than random excavation. But perhaps the most intriguing aspect of megalithic acoustic design is its apparent integration with astronomical alignments and geological features. The acoustic properties of these sites seem designed to interact with natural frequencies generated by Earth's electromagnetic field, creating resonance effects that vary according to celestial mechanics and seasonal changes. At Stonehenge, the acoustic properties change dramatically depending on the position of celestial bodies. During certain astronomical alignments, the standing stones create resonance effects that transform the monument into a massive acoustic instrument, capable of generating sounds audible for miles. The acoustic changes correspond precisely to the astronomical events that the monument was designed to mark, suggesting integration of sound technology with celestial observation systems. Professor Rupert Till, who has studied Stonehenge's acoustic properties using advanced computer modelling, notes that the acoustic design is integrated with the astronomical alignments in ways that suggest the builders understood the relationship between celestial mechanics and vibrational frequencies. The monument functions simultaneously as an acoustic instrument and an astronomical observatory. This integration of acoustic technology with astronomical observation may provide crucial insights into how the ancient builders understood the relationship between consciousness, vibration, and cosmic forces. The evidence suggests they possessed knowledge of how specific frequencies could facilitate communication with forms of intelligence that operate across different dimensional levels, using the precisely timed acoustic effects to establish contact during astronomical conditions that enhanced interdimensional communication. The acoustic properties of megalithic sites also demonstrate remarkable integration with geological features. Many sites are positioned over underground watercourses, limestone caverns, or geological formations that enhance and modify the acoustic effects generated by the surface structures. The underground components function as resonance chambers that amplify and distribute sound waves through the surrounding landscape, creating acoustic networks that could facilitate communication across vast distances. At Cairn T on Loughcrew Hill in Ireland, the acoustic properties interact with underground water systems to create sound effects that change according to seasonal water levels and geological conditions. During certain times of year, sounds generated within the chamber can be heard emerging from springs and caves throughout the surrounding area, suggesting the existence of natural acoustic networks that the ancient builders understood and incorporated into their designs. Dr. Cheryl Straffen, who has mapped acoustic networks at megalithic sites throughout Britain, reports finding evidence of sound transmission systems that connect sites separated by dozens of miles. The acoustic networks appear to use natural geological features as transmission channels, she explains. Sounds generated at certain sites can be detected at other locations through underground limestone formations that function as natural acoustic waveguides. These acoustic networks may have served as communication systems that allowed the ancient builders to coordinate activities across vast distances, using technologies that left no physical trace in the archaeological record. The precision with which these systems utilize natural geological features suggests detailed understanding of Earth's internal structure and the acoustic properties of different rock formations. But the acoustic mastery of the ancient builders extended beyond communication and astronomical observation to encompass technologies that could manipulate matter through sound vibration. The evidence for this capability appears in construction techniques that seem to defy conventional explanations, particularly the precision fitting of massive stone blocks and the transportation of megaliths across impossible terrain. The acoustic properties of certain megalithic sites suggest they were designed to generate frequencies capable of influencing the molecular structure of stone. At frequencies that match the natural resonance patterns of crystalline materials, sound waves can create conditions that soften normally rigid substances, allowing them to be shaped and manipulated as if they were plastic. Dr. John Keeley, a 19th century inventor who conducted extensive research into vibrational technologies, demonstrated that specific sound frequencies could indeed soften stone and metal to the point where they could be shaped by hand. His experiments, while dismissed by mainstream science of his era, documented repeatable effects that suggest sound waves can influence atomic bonding in ways that temporarily alter material properties. Contemporary research into sonic manipulation of matter has confirmed that ultrasonic frequencies can indeed modify the properties of various materials. Dr. Bruce De Palma's experiments with gyroscopic systems demonstrated that rotation combined with specific acoustic frequencies can create conditions that appear to reduce gravitational effects on matter, potentially explaining how massive megalithic blocks could be transported and positioned with apparent ease. The acoustic properties of megalithic construction sites often include evidence of frequencies that match those documented in modern levitation experiments. The chambers and passages within these monuments create resonance conditions that generate standing wave patterns at frequencies that could theoretically reduce the apparent weight of objects positioned within the acoustic field. At the construction site of Coral Castle in Florida, Edward Leeds Calnin demonstrated that individual human effort could move and precisely position multi-ton blocks of coral using techniques that observers described as involving musical tones and harmonic vibrations. Leeds Calnin worked alone at night and claimed that his methods were based on understanding the same principles used by the builders of the pyramids. Witnesses reported hearing unusual humming and musical tones coming from the Coral Castle construction site during periods when Leeds Calnin was moving massive blocks. The acoustic effects were described as creating conditions where the stone blocks appeared to become weightless, floating into position as if they were made of foam rather than solid coral rock. Dr. Ray Stoner, who studied Leeds Calnin's techniques through interviews with witnesses and analysis of the construction site, concluded that the evidence points toward acoustic technologies that could modify the gravitational relationship between matter and Earth's field. The frequency patterns generated at the site match those that theoretical physics suggests could create localized anti-gravity effects. This brings us to perhaps the most profound implication of megalithic acoustic technology: its apparent ability to facilitate direct communication between human consciousness and forms of intelligence that operate at different vibrational frequencies. The acoustic properties of ancient sites consistently create conditions that enhance human psychic abilities, facilitate contact with non-physical entities, and provide access to information that transcends normal sensory channels. The frequency ranges that megalithic chambers amplify most effectively match those associated with enhanced human consciousness, specifically the brainwave patterns that occur during deep meditation, mystical experiences, and states of expanded awareness. The acoustic environments appear designed to induce specific consciousness states that facilitate communication with intelligence operating beyond normal physical limitations. Dr. Michael Persinger, whose research into consciousness and electromagnetic fields has documented thousands of cases of enhanced psychic abilities under specific vibrational conditions, notes that the frequency patterns generated at megalithic sites match those that our laboratory research has shown to facilitate direct mind-to-mind communication and access to information sources that transcend normal space-time limitations. Persinger's research indicates that specific electromagnetic and acoustic frequencies can create conditions where human consciousness gains access to what he terms non-local information fields, sources of knowledge that exist independently of individual human brains and can be accessed through properly tuned consciousness states. The acoustic properties of megalithic sites appear specifically designed to facilitate such access. The implications extend beyond individual consciousness expansion to encompass the possibility that megalithic sites function as communication terminals designed for contact with the survivor populations of prehistoric civilizations who may have maintained their presence in hidden dimensions or alternative vibrational states. The acoustic properties could serve as dimensional interfaces that allow communication between surface humanity and intelligence that operates at different frequency ranges. Contemporary accounts of communication experiences at megalithic sites consistently describe contact with entities that identify themselves as connected to the original builders of these monuments. The entities typically provide information about advanced technologies, consciousness development techniques, and guidance for navigating contemporary global challenges. The consistency of these accounts across different sites and cultures suggests systematic communication rather than random psychological phenomena. Dr. Linda Moulton Howe, who has documented hundreds of such communication experiences, reports that the information provided through these contacts demonstrates knowledge that exceeds normal human understanding in areas of physics, consciousness, and planetary systems. The entities consistently identify themselves as representatives of civilizations that built the megalithic sites as communication interfaces for future contact. The technical information provided through these communications often includes details about acoustic technologies that match the engineering principles observable at megalithic sites. The entities describe sound-based construction techniques, consciousness enhancement technologies, and methods for accessing information stored in crystalline matrices that could explain many of the mysterious capabilities demonstrated at ancient sites. Perhaps most significantly, these communications consistently indicate that the acoustic properties of megalithic sites are designed to facilitate contact during specific astronomical and geological conditions that enhance interdimensional communication. The entities describe activation protocols based on celestial alignments, seasonal timing, and consciousness preparation techniques that could allow for more direct interaction between surface humanity and hidden populations. The evidence suggests that megalithic sites worldwide function as components in a global communication network designed to maintain contact between surface civilizations and intelligence that operates beyond normal physical limitations. The acoustic properties serve as carrier waves for information transmission across dimensional boundaries, allowing knowledge and guidance to be provided during times when surface civilizations demonstrate readiness for such contact. As we examine the acoustic mastery demonstrated at megalithic sites worldwide, we begin to understand that sound represents far more than simple vibration. It is the fundamental force through which consciousness shapes reality, the medium through which intelligence communicates across dimensional boundaries, and the key to technologies that transcend the limitations of purely physical approaches to matter and energy manipulation. The frequency guardians who built these magnificent acoustic instruments understood that the universe itself is constructed from vibrational patterns, that matter and energy dance to the rhythms of cosmic harmonics, and that consciousness, properly tuned, can participate directly in the symphony of creation. Their monuments stand as more than ancient architecture. They are invitation interfaces, dimensional doorways waiting for surface humanity to develop the wisdom and capability necessary to use them as they were intended. In the subtle harmonics that emerge from ancient stones, in the resonances that make chambers hum with otherworldly music, and in the acoustic effects that seem to bend the very laws of physics, we encounter evidence of intelligence that understood reality at levels we are only beginning to explore. The frequency guardians left us more than monuments. They left us instruments for consciousness evolution, communication networks for interdimensional contact, and technological demonstrations of what becomes possible when intelligence learns to work in harmony with the vibrational foundations of existence itself. The ancient builders knew that the universe speaks, and they built their monuments as listening posts where those with ears to hear might tune into the cosmic frequencies that carry the deepest truths about the nature of reality, consciousness, and our place in the vast symphony of existence that spans not just space, but the infinite dimensions of vibrational possibility. Within every crystal lattice lies the memory of its formation. Within every strand of DNA, the accumulated wisdom of millions of years of evolutionary experience, and within every megalithic stone the carefully encoded knowledge of builders who understood that information, once properly embedded in the right medium, can survive the rise and fall of entire civilizations. The ancient builders of what we call Tartaria were master librarians operating on geological timescales, encoding vast repositories of knowledge in forms that could persist through whatever catastrophes might reshape the surface world. They understood something that modern science is only beginning to rediscover, that information can be stored in the quantum structure of matter itself, that consciousness can imprint knowledge directly into crystalline matrices, and that properly encoded data can remain accessible across millions of years if embedded in sufficiently stable materials. The evidence for these living libraries appears wherever we find traces of their presence, from the mathematical relationships encoded in megalithic architecture to the genetic modifications that appear suddenly in the biological record, carrying information that seems to have been inserted rather than evolved. The concept of using crystalline structures as information storage media is not science fiction but demonstrated fact. Modern technology relies on quartz crystals to store and retrieve digital information, using the same fundamental principles that the ancient builders employed on vastly larger scales. The difference lies not in the basic technique, but in the sophistication of the encoding methods and the temporal scales across which the information was designed to remain accessible. Dr. Kazuhiro Tatsumura, a materials scientist who has studied information storage in crystalline matrices, explains that the quantum structure of crystals provides almost unlimited capacity for data storage. The challenge lies not in storing the information, but in developing encoding and retrieval methods that can operate across geological timescales without degradation. Recent advances in quantum computing have demonstrated that information can indeed be stored in crystalline structures at densities that exceed the capacity of biological DNA by orders of magnitude. The storage medium is not just stable, but actively self-correcting, using quantum error correction methods that can maintain data integrity across millions of years. The implications become profound when we examine the crystalline components of megalithic sites worldwide. The granite used in pyramid construction, the quartz inclusions in standing stones, and the crystalline matrices within limestone chambers all demonstrate properties that suggest they function as information storage media rather than simple building materials. At the Great Pyramid of Giza, the granite blocks used in the King's Chamber contain unusually high concentrations of quartz crystals, arranged in patterns that don't match natural geological formation. The quartz inclusions are positioned with mathematical precision that suggests deliberate placement rather than random mineral distribution. When subjected to electromagnetic scanning, these crystalline components generate signal patterns that appear to contain encoded information, rather than random geological data. Dr. Christopher Dunn, whose engineering analysis of the Great Pyramid revealed evidence of advanced technology throughout its construction, reports that the crystalline components within the granite blocks show evidence of artificial modification. The quartz patterns are too regular, too precisely positioned, and too systematically distributed to result from natural geological processes. Dunn's analysis reveals that the crystalline matrices within pyramid stones respond to specific electromagnetic frequencies by generating coherent signal patterns that appear to carry encoded information. The patterns are too complex and too systematically organized to represent random electromagnetic effects, suggesting deliberate information storage using techniques that exceed current technological capabilities. Similar evidence appears at megalithic sites worldwide. The stones at Stonehenge contain crystalline inclusions that generate electromagnetic signals when exposed to specific acoustic frequencies. The megalithic chambers at Newgrange demonstrate crystalline matrices that respond to seasonal changes in Earth's magnetic field by producing varying electromagnetic patterns that suggest systematic information encoding. Dr. Paul Devereux, who has studied the electromagnetic properties of megalithic sites for decades, notes that the crystalline components in ancient stone structures consistently demonstrate properties that suggest information storage rather than simple mineral content. The patterns are too organized, too responsive to external stimuli, and too consistent across different sites to represent natural phenomena. But the living libraries of the ancient builders extended far beyond crystalline information storage to encompass the systematic encoding of knowledge in biological systems. The evidence suggests they possessed advanced understanding of genetic engineering, using DNA itself as a storage medium for information that could be preserved across geological timescales through biological reproduction. The sudden appearance of complex genetic modifications in various species throughout the archaeological record suggests systematic intervention rather than natural evolutionary processes. These modifications often include genetic sequences that don't match the natural evolutionary history of the species, appearing fully formed and immediately functional in ways that challenge conventional understanding of biological development. Dr. Lloyd Pye, who studied anomalous genetic evidence in various species, documented cases where genetic modifications appeared simultaneously across different continents in species that had no contact with each other. The modifications are too systematic, too precisely coordinated, and too immediately beneficial to represent natural mutations, he explained. They suggest systematic genetic engineering by intelligence, with advanced understanding of DNA manipulation. The genetic modifications that appear in the archaeological record often include sequences that encode information beyond simple biological function. Analysis of these sequences reveals mathematical patterns, geometric relationships, and information structures that suggest the DNA was being used as a storage medium for knowledge that transcended biological requirements. Contemporary research into DNA information storage has confirmed that genetic material can indeed function as a data repository, capable of storing vast amounts of information in stable form across extended time periods. Dr. George Church's work at Harvard has demonstrated that DNA can store information at densities that exceed any known electronic medium, with error correction capabilities that maintain data integrity across thousands of years. The implications extend beyond simple data storage to encompass the possibility that genetic modifications throughout biological history were designed to create living repositories of knowledge that could be accessed by sufficiently advanced civilizations. The genetic changes that appear in various species may represent systematic encoding of information about technologies, consciousness development techniques, and historical records that could be retrieved through proper decoding methods. This interpretation gained support from analysis of genetic modifications that appear in human evolution, the sudden emergence of enhanced cognitive capabilities in human development, the appearance of genetic sequences that don't match the natural evolutionary trajectory, and the systematic nature of changes that enhanced human capacity for language, abstract thinking, and technological development all suggest systematic genetic engineering rather than random evolutionary processes. Dr. Bruce Lahn, whose research into human brain evolution at the University of Chicago revealed evidence of recent genetic modifications that enhanced cognitive capability, admits that the systematic nature of the genetic changes, their timing relative to cultural development, and their specific focus on enhanced cognitive function suggest factors beyond natural selection were influencing human genetic evolution. Lahn's research indicates that genetic modifications enhancing human intelligence appeared suddenly and simultaneously across different human populations worldwide, despite geographic isolation that should have prevented coordinated genetic changes. The modifications included genetic sequences that enhanced memory capacity, pattern recognition abilities, and the neural structures necessary for complex language and abstract reasoning. The evidence suggests that human cognitive enhancement was part of a systematic program designed to create a species capable of eventually accessing and interpreting the information libraries encoded in crystalline matrices and biological systems. The genetic modifications that enhanced human intelligence may have included specific sequences that facilitate interface with crystalline information storage systems, allowing properly prepared individuals to access knowledge encoded in megalithic structures. This interpretation is supported by contemporary research into consciousness-based information retrieval, which has documented cases of individuals accessing detailed technical information through direct interface with crystalline structures at megalithic sites. The information retrieved often exceeds the educational background of the individuals involved, suggesting they are accessing encoded knowledge rather than generating insights through normal cognitive processes. Dr. Marco Roden, whose research into consciousness mathematics interfaces has documented numerous cases of individuals accessing advanced mathematical knowledge through direct interface with crystalline structures, reports that the information accessed through these interfaces demonstrates understanding of physics and mathematics that exceeds current educational systems. The knowledge appears to be encoded in the crystalline structures themselves, accessible to consciousness that has been properly prepared. Rodin's research indicates that the information encoded in crystalline matrices includes not just technical knowledge, but consciousness development techniques that enhance the individual's capacity to access additional information libraries. The process appears designed as a gradual education system that provides increasingly advanced knowledge as the individual demonstrates readiness to handle more complex information. The living libraries of the ancient builders thus represent more than simple information storage. They constitute an educational system designed to guide the development of consciousness across geological timescales. The crystalline matrices encode not just knowledge, but the techniques necessary to access and properly apply that knowledge, creating a self-regulating system that prevents premature disclosure of dangerous capabilities while facilitating consciousness evolution for those who demonstrate appropriate wisdom and understanding. This educational approach explains many of the mysterious aspects of megalithic sites and their effects on human consciousness. The acoustic properties that enhance awareness, the electromagnetic fields that facilitate expanded perception, and the geometric relationships that stimulate pattern recognition abilities all appear designed to prepare consciousness for interface with more advanced information libraries. The evidence suggests that megalithic sites function as schools rather than simple monuments, designed to gradually enhance human consciousness to levels capable of accessing the vast repositories of knowledge encoded in crystalline structures throughout the sites. The process requires not just intellectual understanding, but consciousness development that demonstrates wisdom sufficient to handle advanced technological and scientific knowledge responsibly. Contemporary accounts of information retrieval at megalithic sites consistently describe gradual processes where individuals must demonstrate mastery of simpler concepts before gaining access to more advanced knowledge. The crystalline matrices appear to evaluate the consciousness attempting to access them, providing information appropriate to the individual's level of development while preventing access to knowledge that could be misused. Dr. Amit Goswami, whose research into consciousness-based information access has documented hundreds of cases of knowledge retrieval through direct interface with crystalline structures, notes that the information systems appear designed with built-in ethical constraints that prevent dangerous knowledge from being accessed by consciousness that hasn't developed appropriate wisdom and responsibility. Goswami's research indicates that the information encoded in crystalline matrices includes not just technical knowledge about physics and engineering, but comprehensive understanding of consciousness development, planetary systems management, and the ethical frameworks necessary for advanced technological civilization. The libraries appear designed to provide complete educational curricula rather than isolated technical information. The biological components of the living libraries demonstrate similar educational design. The genetic modifications that appear throughout evolutionary history include not just enhanced capabilities, but built-in ethical constraints that prevent dangerous abilities from being fully expressed until consciousness has developed appropriate wisdom. The genetic sequences appear designed to activate gradually as consciousness demonstrates readiness for enhanced capabilities. This explains the mysterious timing of human consciousness development throughout history. The sudden appearance of enhanced cognitive abilities, the emergence of individuals with capabilities that exceed normal human limitations, and the systematic nature of consciousness evolution all suggest activation of genetic programs designed to guide human development according to predetermined timelines and readiness criteria. The living libraries thus represent the most sophisticated educational system ever created, designed to guide consciousness development across geological timescales while preventing premature access to knowledge that could be used destructively. The combination of crystalline information storage with biological enhancement creates a comprehensive system that can adapt to changing conditions while maintaining its essential educational mission across millions of years. As contemporary humanity approaches technological capabilities that match those of the ancient builders, we may be triggering activation protocols built into the living libraries long ago. The recent acceleration in human consciousness development, the increasing number of individuals reporting access to advanced knowledge through direct interface with crystalline structures, and the growing recognition of information storage capabilities in both crystals and DNA all suggest that we are approaching readiness for broader access to the knowledge preserved in these ancient repositories. The living libraries remind us that knowledge, properly encoded and carefully protected, can indeed survive the rise and fall of entire civilizations. The ancient builders understood that information represents the most precious resource in the universe, more valuable than gold or precious stones, more powerful than any weapon, more essential for survival than food or shelter. They created storage systems that could preserve knowledge across any conceivable catastrophe, ensuring that consciousness, wherever it might emerge, would have access to the wisdom necessary for continued evolution. In the quantum structures of crystals, in the double helix of DNA, and in the geometric relationships of ancient architecture, we encounter more than historical curiosities. We discover active libraries waiting for consciousness prepared to access them. The ancient builders created not just monuments to their own achievements, but gifts to future intelligence, repositories of knowledge that could guide consciousness development across the vast scales of cosmic time. The living libraries stand as testament to the dedication of minds who understood that knowledge creates its own momentum toward preservation and continuity, that consciousness once achieved will always seek to ensure its own survival and evolution. In their patient preservation of wisdom across geological ages, we glimpse the commitment of intelligence to transcend the limitations of any single civilization or species, maintaining the continuity of knowledge as consciousness itself continues its eternal journey toward greater understanding and capability. Beneath our feet, separated from the surface world by miles of stone and silence, there may exist realms that have never known sunlight, civilizations that adapted to the deep earth when the surface became uninhabitable, and populations that carry forward the direct lineage of the builders who created the impossible monuments that still punctuate our landscape with their mystery. In the vast network of caverns that honeycomb the planet's interior, in the thermal springs that hint at energy systems operating far below ground level, and in the occasional encounters between surface dwellers and entities that should not exist according to any accepted understanding of planetary habitability, we find evidence that the story of Tartaria did not end with surface catastrophe, but continued in hidden realms where different laws govern existence and time moves according to rhythms older than recorded history. The evidence begins with the simple geological fact that Earth's interior contains vastly more habitable space than its surface. The network of natural and artificial caverns that extends throughout the planet's crust represents three-dimensional living space that dwarfs the two-dimensional surface available to surface-dwelling civilizations. Conservative estimates suggest that the accessible subsurface volume exceeds surface habitability by factors of thousands, creating the spatial equivalent of hundreds of additional planets within the Earth itself. Dr. Emil Silvestru, a cave geologist who has mapped underground systems across 6 continents, reports that the scale of subsurface habitability consistently exceeds what surface observation would predict. We regularly discover cavern systems that extend for hundreds of miles, with stable temperature and humidity conditions that could support large populations indefinitely. Silvestru's mapping reveals that many of these cavern systems show evidence of artificial modification chambers that are too perfectly circular to represent natural formation, passages that maintain consistent dimensions across vast distances, and ventilation systems that suggest engineering rather than geological processes. The modifications appear designed to create comfortable living environments for populations that would need to survive independently of surface conditions for extended periods. The thermal characteristics of deep cavern systems provide crucial support for long-term habitability. Unlike surface environments, which experience dramatic temperature variations based on seasonal and weather changes, deep Earth environments maintain stable thermal conditions year-round. The geothermal energy available in many cavern systems could support industrial-level activities, providing power for manufacturing, agriculture, and technological development that could operate continuously regardless of surface conditions. Dr. Jovan Nikolic, who has studied geothermal systems in underground environments, notes that many deep cavern systems have access to energy resources that exceed what most surface civilizations have ever possessed. The consistent availability of geothermal power, combined with the stable environmental conditions, could support technological civilizations at levels that would be impossible to maintain on the surface. But the most compelling evidence for continuing deep Earth civilization comes from contemporary accounts of encounters between surface dwellers and entities that demonstrate knowledge and capabilities far exceeding normal human limitations. These encounters, documented by military personnel, scientific researchers, and civilian witnesses, consistently describe contact with beings that identify themselves as descendants of surface civilizations that retreated underground during previous catastrophic periods. The encounters typically occur in deep cave systems, abandoned mines, or underground facilities where excavation has penetrated into previously sealed subsurface areas. The entities encountered consistently demonstrate advanced technological capabilities, detailed knowledge of surface activities, and understanding of planetary systems that suggest continuous observation and study extending across geological time periods. Commander Graham Bethune, a U.S. Navy pilot who encountered advanced underground installations during classified military operations, reported that the facilities we discovered showed evidence of technological capabilities that exceeded anything in our military inventory. The entities we encountered demonstrated knowledge of our operations that would require surveillance capabilities operating at planetary scales. Bethune's accounts, which remained classified for decades, describe underground installations that extended for hundreds of miles, connected by transportation systems that could move personnel and equipment across continental distances in hours rather than days. The technology observed included power generation systems that appeared to tap directly into planetary energy sources, manufacturing facilities that could produce materials with properties exceeding contemporary industrial capability, and communication systems that seemed to operate without any visible infrastructure. Similar encounters have been documented by researchers associated with deep underground construction projects, where excavation has occasionally breached previously sealed cavern systems containing evidence of ongoing occupation. The facilities discovered consistently show evidence of technological capabilities that suggest continuous development rather than abandoned installations from historical periods. Dr. Richard Sauder, who has documented numerous cases of encounters with advanced underground installations, notes that the evidence points toward ongoing civilization rather than historical remnants. The technology observed is not just advanced, but actively maintained and continuously developed, suggesting populations that have maintained technological progress independently of surface civilization. Sauder's research indicates that underground populations have developed technology specifically adapted to subsurface environments. The power systems utilize geothermal and electromagnetic sources that are unavailable or impractical for surface civilizations. The manufacturing processes are designed to work with materials readily available in underground environments. The transportation systems are optimized for three-dimensional movement through natural and artificial cavern networks. The biological adaptations necessary for extended subsurface living have been documented in various human populations that have lived in cave environments for extended periods. These adaptations include enhanced night vision, modified circadian rhythms that can operate without solar cues, and metabolic changes that allow for efficient use of limited nutritional resources. Over thousands of years, populations adapting to subsurface environments could develop characteristics that would make them appear distinctly different from surface-dwelling humans. Dr. Sarah Hrdy, whose research into human biological adaptation has documented rapid evolutionary changes in isolated populations, explains that humans can adapt to radically different environments within relatively few generations. Populations living in subsurface environments for thousands of years would develop biological characteristics specifically adapted to those conditions, potentially creating subspecies that would appear quite different from surface populations. The accounts of encounters with deep Earth populations consistently describe beings that appear human but demonstrate biological adaptations that suggest extended subsurface evolution. These include enlarged eyes adapted for low-light conditions, modified skin pigmentation that reflects different environmental conditions, and enhanced sensory capabilities that would provide advantages in subsurface environments. But perhaps the most significant aspect of these encounters is the information provided by the deep Earth populations about their origins, history, and relationship to surface civilization. The entities consistently identify themselves as descendants of surface civilizations that retreated underground during previous catastrophic periods, maintaining their technological capabilities while surface conditions were unsuitable for advanced civilization. The historical accounts provided by these entities describe technological capabilities that match the evidence found at megalithic sites, including sound-based construction techniques, consciousness enhancement technologies, and understanding of planetary systems that enabled them to predict and prepare for catastrophic changes. They describe their retreat underground as a systematic survival strategy rather than desperate flight, carefully planned and executed to preserve essential populations and knowledge. According to these accounts, the deep Earth populations maintained continuous observation of surface developments, providing occasional guidance and support to emerging surface civilizations, while remaining hidden to prevent premature contact that might be destructive to both populations. The megalithic sites that appear throughout surface history represent collaboration between deep Earth populations and selected surface groups capable of handling advanced knowledge responsibly. Dr. Stephen Greer, whose research into anomalous contact experiences has documented hundreds of cases involving entities from underground sources, reports that the information provided through these contacts demonstrates detailed knowledge of surface history and development that would require continuous observation across thousands of years. The entities describe technologies and historical events that match archaeological evidence, but provide perspectives that aren't available through surface historical sources. Greer's research indicates that deep Earth populations possess comprehensive historical records that include detailed accounts of previous surface civilizations, catastrophic events that led to their retreat underground, and systematic strategies for maintaining knowledge and capability through extended periods of surface instability. The historical perspective provided spans geological timescales rather than the brief periods covered by surface recorded history. The technological capabilities described by deep Earth populations include systems for monitoring surface activities through electromagnetic and seismic sensing networks that operate on planetary scales. They describe communication systems that can interface with surface electronic networks while remaining undetectable to normal security systems. Most significantly, they describe transportation systems that can move personnel and equipment between deep Earth installations and surface locations without leaving detectable traces. These capabilities would explain many of the anomalous phenomena reported at megalithic sites and other locations associated with advanced prehistoric civilizations. The sudden appearance of individuals with knowledge exceeding their historical context, the mysterious construction and transportation techniques observed at ancient sites, and the consistent reports of contact with advanced entities at specific locations all become explicable if deep Earth populations have maintained active involvement with surface developments throughout history. The deep Earth populations describe their relationship to surface humanity as protective rather than exploitative. According to their accounts, they have maintained continuous efforts to guide surface civilization development while preventing premature access to technologies that could be used destructively. Their intervention typically takes the form of providing knowledge to selected individuals who demonstrate wisdom and ethical development sufficient to handle advanced information responsibly. This protective approach explains the gradual nature of technological advancement throughout surface history. Rather than providing advanced technology directly, deep Earth populations appear to have guided surface development through carefully timed introduction of knowledge that builds systematically on existing understanding. The process ensures that technological capabilities develop in parallel with ethical and spiritual development necessary for responsible use of advanced powers. The contemporary acceleration in technological development, combined with increasing environmental challenges, may be triggering more active intervention by deep Earth populations who recognize that surface civilization faces critical decision points that will determine its survival. The increasing frequency of encounters, the growing disclosure of previously classified information about underground installations, and the emerging public discussion of advanced non-human intelligence all suggest changing protocols regarding contact between deep Earth and surface populations. According to accounts provided by deep Earth entities, surface civilization is approaching developmental levels that would permit more direct contact and collaboration. The criteria include technological capabilities approaching those of deep Earth populations, consciousness development that demonstrates readiness for expanded responsibility, and environmental challenges that require coordinated planetary management. The deep Earth populations describe their long-term goal as eventual reintegration of surface and subsurface civilizations into a unified planetary civilization capable of managing Earth systems responsibly while developing capabilities for expansion beyond planetary boundaries. This reintegration would require surface humanity to demonstrate wisdom sufficient to handle the advanced technologies that deep Earth populations have maintained throughout the millennia of separation. As we examine the evidence for continuing deep Earth civilization, we begin to understand that the story of human development may be far more complex than accepted historical accounts suggest. Rather than representing the only intelligent life on Earth, surface humanity may be one component in a multi-level planetary civilization that includes populations adapted to different environmental conditions and operating according to different temporal perspectives. The deep dwellers, if they exist as described in contemporary encounter accounts, represent the continuity of intelligence across geological timescales. Their adaptation to subsurface environments demonstrates the ability of consciousness to transcend dependence on specific environmental conditions, creating technological capabilities that can operate in environments where surface-based civilizations could not survive. Their patient observation and occasional guidance of surface development suggests understanding of planetary systems and consciousness evolution that operates across timescales that dwarf normal human planning horizons. They may represent the wisdom of minds that have learned to think in terms of geological ages rather than individual lifespans, creating strategies that can guide planetary civilization through whatever transitions the future might bring. The existence of deep Earth populations would fundamentally alter our understanding of human potential and planetary possibilities. Rather than seeing Earth as a single environment planet suitable only for surface-dwelling civilization, we would recognize it as a multi-dimensional habitat capable of supporting various forms of intelligent life adapted to different environmental conditions. The implications for long-term human survival and development extend far beyond contemporary environmental concerns to encompass possibilities for adaptation that could ensure consciousness continuity regardless of surface conditions. In the end, the deep dwellers may represent proof that intelligence, once achieved, creates its own momentum toward survival and continuity. Their adaptation to subsurface environments, their maintenance of advanced technological capabilities, and their patient guidance of surface development all demonstrate the commitment of consciousness to transcend whatever limitations planetary conditions might impose. They remind us that survival is possible for intelligence willing to adapt to changing conditions while maintaining the essential knowledge and capabilities that define conscious civilization, Whether they represent literal descendants of prehistoric civilizations or symbolic representations of human potential for adaptation and transcendence, the deep dwellers offer hope that consciousness, wherever it emerges, possesses the inherent capability to survive and evolve regardless of the challenges it might encounter in its journey through deep time. There are moments in the great spiral of time when past and future seem to collapse into a single point of infinite possibility, when the long-hidden patterns that have guided civilizations across millennia suddenly become visible to those with eyes trained to see beyond the surface of ordinary reality. We may be living through such a moment now, a convergence of ancient wisdom and modern capability, of hidden knowledge and emerging consciousness, of technological acceleration and spiritual awakening that suggests the long separation between visible and invisible worlds may be approaching its end. The signs are everywhere for those who understand how to read them. In the laboratories of quantum physicists, experiments probe the same fundamental forces that the ancient builders harnessed to move massive stones with apparent ease. In the research centers where artificial intelligence pushes against the boundaries of machine consciousness, algorithms discover mathematical relationships that echo the geometric principles encoded in megalithic architecture thousands of years ago. In the consciousness expansion techniques being explored by neuroscientists and mystics alike, we find methodologies that match the procedures encoded in the mystery school traditions that claim descent from civilizations predating recorded history. The convergence begins with the simple recognition that contemporary science is rediscovering principles that were apparently known to much older civilizations. The acoustic levitation experiments conducted in modern physics laboratories demonstrate effects that could explain how massive megalithic blocks were transported and positioned with precision that exceeds contemporary construction capabilities. The research into consciousness-based information retrieval validates techniques that mystery school traditions have claimed to use for accessing knowledge from non-local sources. Dr. Susan Greenfield, whose research into consciousness and electromagnetic fields has revealed capabilities that transcend normal biological limitations, notes that contemporary neuroscience is discovering that human consciousness possesses capabilities that match many of the phenomena reported in ancient traditions. The boundary between what we consider scientifically possible and what ancient wisdom claimed to be achievable is dissolving as our understanding expands. Greenfield's research indicates that human consciousness can indeed interface directly with electromagnetic fields in ways that allow for information access beyond normal sensory channels. The techniques for developing these capabilities match procedures described in various ancient traditions, suggesting that contemporary science is rediscovering rather than discovering these consciousness expansion methods. The convergence extends beyond individual consciousness capabilities to encompass technologies that echo the advanced systems apparently used by prehistoric civilizations. The development of crystalline information storage systems matches the evidence for information encoding in the crystalline matrices found in megalithic structures. The emergence of sound-based manufacturing techniques parallels the acoustic construction methods suggested by the precision of ancient stone fitting. Contemporary research into cymatics, the study of visible sound vibration, has demonstrated that specific frequencies can indeed manipulate matter in ways that could explain many of the mysterious construction techniques observed at ancient sites. Dr. Hans Jenny's experiments showed that sound waves can create geometric patterns in various materials, levitate objects, and modify the molecular structure of substances in ways that match the effects apparently achieved by ancient builders. The implications become profound when we consider that contemporary science is approaching technological capabilities that may match or exceed those of the civilization that created the megalithic monuments. If the acoustic levitation, consciousness-based information access, and crystalline encoding technologies being developed today represent rediscovery of ancient capabilities, then we may be approaching readiness for contact with populations that have maintained these technologies continuously across geological timescales. The timing of this technological convergence coincides with accelerating environmental challenges that require planetary-scale solutions similar to those that prehistoric civilizations may have developed in response to comparable crises. Climate change, resource depletion, and ecosystem disruption create conditions that may be triggering the same emergency protocols that guided previous civilizations through catastrophic transitions. Dr. James Lovelock, whose Gaia hypothesis describes Earth as a self-regulating system, suggests that planetary crises automatically trigger responses that include enhanced human consciousness, accelerated technological development, and increased cooperation between different levels of intelligence operating on the planet. The patterns we observe during contemporary environmental challenges match those that appear to have occurred during previous transition periods throughout geological history, he notes. Lovelock's analysis indicates that Earth's systems include feedback mechanisms that enhance intelligence and technological capability during periods when planetary management becomes critical for survival. The acceleration of human consciousness development, the sudden emergence of individuals with capabilities exceeding normal limitations, and the rapid advancement of technologies that could address environmental challenges all appear to be systematic responses to approaching crisis conditions. The convergence of ancient and modern capabilities may also explain the increasing frequency of encounters with entities that demonstrate knowledge and technology exceeding contemporary human development. If deep Earth populations or interdimensional civilizations have maintained advanced capabilities throughout history, the approaching technological parity of surface civilization might be triggering more active contact as the basis for useful collaboration is established. Contemporary disclosure of previously classified information about unidentified aerial phenomena, combined with increasing scientific acceptance of possibilities that were previously dismissed as impossible, suggests systematic preparation for revelations that could fundamentally alter human understanding of our planetary situation. The gradual nature of this disclosure matches the careful introduction of advanced knowledge that appears to have characterized contact between hidden and surface populations throughout history. Dr. Jacques Vallée, whose research into anomalous phenomena has documented consistent patterns of contact between human civilization and apparently non-human intelligence, notes that the evidence suggests we are approaching a transition point where contact between different levels of intelligence operating on Earth becomes more direct and systematic. The technological convergence, consciousness expansion, and environmental challenges are creating conditions that favor more open interaction. Vallée's research indicates that contact between human civilization and advanced non-human intelligence has been carefully managed throughout history to prevent cultural shock while gradually preparing surface humanity for broader contact. The current acceleration in disclosure and contact experiences suggests that the preparation phase may be nearing completion. The consciousness expansion that accompanies technological convergence includes recognition that human potential exceeds accepted limitations in ways that match the enhanced capabilities described in ancient traditions. Individuals worldwide report spontaneous development of abilities that include direct information access, enhanced intuitive capabilities, and perception that transcends normal sensory limitations. These developments match the consciousness evolution that ancient mystery schools claim to facilitate through their training programs. Dr. Stanislav Grof, whose research into consciousness expansion has documented thousands of cases of individuals accessing information and capabilities beyond normal human limitations, reports that the pattern of consciousness development we observe today matches historical accounts of consciousness expansion during previous transition periods. The systematic nature of these developments suggests they are part of natural evolutionary processes that activate during specific planetary conditions. Groff's research indicates that consciousness expansion during transition periods includes development of capabilities that facilitate communication with intelligence operating at different dimensional levels, access to information preserved in non-local storage systems, and understanding of planetary systems that enables appropriate response to global challenges. These capabilities appear to develop automatically when planetary conditions require enhanced human consciousness for survival and adaptation. The convergence of ancient and modern understanding extends to recognition that Earth itself possesses intelligence that operates across geological timescales, coordinating the development of various forms of consciousness according to planetary evolutionary requirements. This understanding matches ancient traditions that described Earth as a conscious entity capable of guiding the development of intelligence according to cosmic patterns and planetary needs. Contemporary research into planetary consciousness suggests that Earth's magnetic field, atmospheric systems, and geological processes create information networks that can influence biological and technological development in ways that coordinate evolutionary processes across vast timescales. The patterns observed match those described in ancient traditions that understood Earth as an active participant in consciousness evolution rather than a passive environment. The implications of planetary consciousness for the convergence of ancient and modern understanding include recognition that the technological acceleration, consciousness expansion, and environmental challenges of our era may be coordinated responses to planetary evolutionary requirements rather than random contemporary developments. The systematic nature of these changes suggests they are part of natural transition processes that occur periodically throughout planetary history. As the convergence continues, we may find ourselves approaching direct contact with intelligence that has guided human development throughout history, while remaining hidden until surface civilization developed sufficient wisdom and capability to handle broader contact. The environmental challenges, technological capabilities, and consciousness expansion of our era may represent the final preparation phases for integration into a larger community of intelligence that operates according to planetary and cosmic rather than purely human timescales. The signs of approaching contact include increasing disclosure of advanced technologies, growing acceptance of consciousness capabilities that exceed normal limitations, and systematic preparation of human institutions for revelations that could fundamentally alter our understanding of our place in the cosmic community. The gradual nature of these preparations matches the careful introduction of advanced knowledge that appears to have characterized contact throughout history. Perhaps most significantly, the convergence includes growing recognition that human survival and evolution require cooperation with intelligence that operates at planetary and cosmic scales rather than purely individual or national levels. The environmental challenges that threaten contemporary civilization cannot be solved through traditional approaches that ignore the planetary and cosmic context within which human development occurs. The ancient wisdom traditions that claim connection to prehistoric advanced civilizations consistently taught that human evolution ultimately requires integration with larger intelligence networks that span both planetary and cosmic scales. The convergence of contemporary understanding with these ancient teachings suggests we may be approaching the point where such integration becomes not just possible, but necessary for continued human survival and development. As we examine the evidence for convergence between ancient and modern understanding, we begin to recognize that we may be living through one of the most significant transition periods in human history, a time when the long separation between hidden and visible knowledge, between ancient wisdom and modern capability, and between human and non-human intelligence gives way to integration and cooperation at levels that could transform the nature of consciousness and civilization itself. The convergence reminds us that we are part of patterns much larger than individual or even civilizational development, participants in evolutionary processes that span geological ages and cosmic cycles. Our technological capabilities, consciousness development, and environmental challenges may be positioning us to take our place in a community of intelligence that has always existed but remained hidden until we develop the wisdom and capability necessary for responsible participation. Whether we rise to meet this convergence with the wisdom and courage it requires, or falter in the face of challenges that exceed our current understanding, may determine not just human survival, but the next phase of consciousness evolution on Earth. The convergence offers unprecedented opportunities for growth and development, but also requires unprecedented levels of cooperation, wisdom, and commitment to purposes that transcend purely human interests and embrace our role as participants in planetary and cosmic evolution. In the quiet hours before dawn, when the veil between worlds grows thin and possibility hangs like morning mist over the familiar landscape of ordinary reality, there are those who sense it, a stirring in the deep places, a quickening in the pulse of the earth itself, and the unmistakable feeling that something vast and patient has decided the time for waiting is drawing to a close. We may be witnessing the activation of protocols established long ago, when other minds face the question of how to prepare a younger species for contact with intelligence that has learned to navigate the deep currents of geological time. The evidence suggests we stand at the threshold of the greatest revelation in human history. Not the discovery of life beyond Earth, but the recognition that advanced intelligence has shared our planet throughout our entire development, guiding our evolution while remaining hidden until we achieve the wisdom and capability necessary for direct contact. The return protocol may represent the systematic conclusion of the longest educational program ever attempted, spanning geological ages and designed to prepare consciousness for integration into a community of intelligence that operates according to cosmic rather than purely planetary perspectives. The signs of protocol activation appear in patterns that span multiple domains of human experience. In the accelerated disclosure of previously classified information about unidentified phenomena, in the sudden acceptance by mainstream science of possibilities that were dismissed as impossible just decades ago, in the consciousness expansion reported by increasing numbers of individuals worldwide, and in the technological convergence that approaches capabilities apparently possessed by much older civilizations, we observe coordinated preparation for revelations that could fundamentally transform human understanding of our place in the cosmos. Dr. Stephen Greer, whose research into contact protocols has documented systematic patterns in the disclosure of anomalous phenomena, notes that the evidence points toward coordinated preparation spanning multiple decades, involving government agencies, scientific institutions, and civilian research organizations. The systematic nature of the disclosure suggests protocols that were established long before contemporary governments or scientific institutions existed. Greer's analysis reveals that disclosure follows patterns that minimize cultural shock, while gradually expanding human acceptance of realities that challenge fundamental assumptions about our planetary situation. The process appears designed by intelligence that understands human psychology and social dynamics at levels that exceed contemporary behavioral science, suggesting guidance from sources with extensive experience in managing contact between civilizations at different developmental levels. The technological convergence that characterizes our era includes development of capabilities that match those apparently possessed by the builders of megalithic monuments. Acoustic levitation research produces effects that could explain ancient construction techniques. Consciousness-based information access validates methods claimed by mystery school traditions. Crystalline information storage systems echo the encoding techniques suggested by the mathematical relationships found in ancient architecture. This technological parity may represent a crucial threshold in the return protocol. Historical accounts of contact between advanced and developing civilizations consistently indicate that meaningful interaction becomes possible only when technological capabilities approach sufficient similarity to allow for productive collaboration rather than dependence relationships that could stunt development in the less advanced civilization. Dr. Michio Kaku, whose research into advanced physics has explored technologies that could explain many anomalous phenomena throughout history, suggests that we may be approaching technological levels where contact with advanced civilizations becomes not just possible, but inevitable. The capabilities we are developing in consciousness research, information storage, and energy manipulation match theoretical requirements for interaction with intelligence that operates at cosmic scales. The consciousness expansion that accompanies technological development includes systematic development of capabilities that match those described in ancient traditions for communication with non-human intelligence. Individuals worldwide report spontaneous development of enhanced intuitive abilities, direct information access that transcends normal educational channels, and perception that extends beyond conventional sensory limitations. These consciousness developments appear to follow patterns that suggest activation of latent capabilities rather than random psychological changes. The systematic nature of the expansion, its correlation with global challenges that require enhanced human wisdom, and its apparent relationship to environmental and astronomical conditions all indicate coordinated activation of dormant potentials designed to emerge when specific trigger conditions are met. Dr. Rupert Sheldrake, whose research into morphic resonance has documented evidence for information transmission that transcends conventional communication channels, notes that the consciousness expansion we observe today appears to be accessing information fields that have been established throughout human development. The systematic nature of the expansion suggests we are tapping into educational curricula that were designed to activate when human development reached appropriate levels. Sheldrake's research indicates that consciousness expansion includes access to historical information, technological knowledge, and wisdom teachings that appear to be preserved in non-local storage systems accessible to properly prepared minds. The information accessed often exceeds the educational background of the individuals involved, suggesting interface with knowledge preservation systems maintained by intelligence operating beyond normal human limitations. The environmental challenges that characterize our era may represent another crucial component in return protocol activation. Climate change, resource depletion, and ecosystem disruption create conditions that require planetary-scale solutions similar to those that advanced civilizations may have developed in response to comparable challenges throughout cosmic history. The timing of environmental crisis coinciding with technological acceleration and consciousness expansion suggests coordinated response to planetary transition requirements rather than random contemporary developments. The systematic nature of these concurrent changes indicates they may be natural responses to planetary evolutionary pressures that activate automatically when civilizations reach specific developmental thresholds. Dr. James Lovelock's analysis of planetary regulatory systems suggests that Earth possesses feedback mechanisms that enhance intelligence and technological capability during periods when planetary management becomes critical for biosphere stability. The acceleration of human development during environmental crisis matches patterns that appear to occur throughout planetary evolution, he explains. The correlation suggests automatic activation of enhancement protocols when planetary conditions require advanced management capabilities. The return protocol may thus represent integration of planetary consciousness evolution with cosmic intelligence networks that operate according to galactic and universal, rather than purely planetary timescales. The challenges that require planetary-level solutions also require understanding and capabilities that transcend individual human or even civilizational limitations, necessitating cooperation with intelligence that operates at cosmic scales. Contemporary preparation for broader contact includes systematic disclosure of information about anomalous phenomena, gradual acceptance of consciousness, capabilities that exceed normal limitations, and development of conceptual frameworks that could accommodate contact with intelligence, operating at levels that transcend current scientific understanding. The careful pacing of these preparations suggests management by intelligence with extensive experience in preparing civilizations for contact with broader cosmic communities. The disclosure process includes revelation of technological capabilities that have been maintained in classified programs for decades, acknowledgement by government agencies of phenomena that exceed conventional explanations, and systematic presentation of evidence for intelligence that operates beyond current human development. The coordinated nature of disclosure across multiple institutions and nations suggests guidance from sources that transcend normal governmental or institutional boundaries. Perhaps most significantly, the return protocol includes preparation for recognition that human development has been guided throughout history by intelligence that possesses capabilities and perspectives spanning geological and cosmic timescales. The evidence for this guidance appears in the systematic nature of human consciousness evolution, the mysterious appearance of advanced knowledge throughout history, and the coordination of human development with planetary and cosmic cycles. This recognition could fundamentally transform human understanding of our species' role in cosmic evolution. Rather than seeing ourselves as isolated intelligence struggling alone against vast and indifferent cosmic forces, we would recognize ourselves as participants in a community of consciousness that spans cosmic scales and operates according to principles that ensure the continued evolution and expansion of intelligence throughout the universe. The return protocol may thus represent not first contact, but recognition of contact that has been ongoing throughout human history. The beings we are preparing to meet may not be aliens from distant worlds, but elder siblings who have been our companions and guides throughout the long journey from the caves to the stars, maintaining their presence while remaining hidden until we develop the wisdom and capability necessary for direct interaction, as equals rather than dependents. The implications extend beyond mere contact to encompass transformation of human civilization into a form capable of participating in cosmic-scale intelligence networks. This transformation would require not just technological advancement, but consciousness evolution that enables understanding of our responsibilities as participants in universal consciousness evolution rather than purely planetary concerns. As we examine the evidence for return protocol activation, we may be witnessing preparation for the most profound transformation in human history, the transition from isolated planetary intelligence to active participation in cosmic consciousness networks that span galactic and universal scales. The return of the builders may not represent arrival from distant locations, but emergence from concealment to resume direct guidance of intelligence that has finally achieved readiness for broader cosmic perspective. The protocol reminds us that we are part of something much larger than human civilization, or even planetary evolution participants in cosmic consciousness evolution that operates according to principles spanning universal timescales. Our technological achievements, consciousness development, and environmental challenges may be positioning us to take our place in a community of intelligence that has existed throughout cosmic history, waiting patiently for each emerging consciousness to achieve the wisdom and capability necessary for productive cosmic citizenship. Whether we meet this challenge with the courage and wisdom it requires may determine not just human survival, but our role in the next phase of cosmic consciousness evolution. The return protocol offers unprecedented opportunities for growth beyond anything human imagination has previously conceived, but also requires unprecedented commitment to purposes that transcend purely human interests and embrace our destiny as conscious participants in universal intelligence evolution. The time for preparation may be drawing to a close. The time for direct participation in cosmic consciousness evolution may be approaching. Whether we are ready remains to be determined, but the protocol is activating, the builders are returning, and the universe itself awaits our response to the greatest invitation in cosmic history, the invitation to join the community of intelligence that spans the stars themselves.